call for May 3rd. Can we have the roll call, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor Schilling.
Here.
Councilor Beltramini.
Present.
Fleming.
Here.
Howard. Kerwin.
Here.
McGinnis.
Here.
Slater.
Here.
Quorum present.
Madam Mayor,
Mayor Pro Tem Fleming.
I'm going to move again at this meeting to excuse the absence of Councilman Howard at this special study session due to being out of the county, actually out of the country.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Fleming, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini, that we excuse Councilman Martin Howard for being out of the county. Discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
Just for the record, I think we all know that he is out of the country, actually in Australia, because he was married on Saturday and hasn't returned. And we knew this going into the study session. It's unfortunate that he's not here. He will be back, I understand, for the meeting on Monday for the budget review. But I think it's unfortunate, but under the circumstances, I think a person being out of the country for a wedding is a legitimate excuse. And while we say we don't need to excuse and we just move forward and forget this, there are consequences, according to our charter, if I'm not mistaken, for not excusing people from meetings. Because if you miss too many meetings as a council person, then you can be asked to resign or actually vote no, if I'm not mistaken. So I think under the circumstances, this is a little extenuating, and the man to be out of the country on a wedding is a legitimate reason. So I respectfully request that we excuse him, so this doesn't count against his attendance. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilwoman McGinnis?
if I may, I did have an opportunity to speak with Councilperson Howard, and we had a discussion about providing additional information in terms of planning and scheduling as a council while we move forward, I think, through some unprecedented times and some very difficult times. And after that discussion, I was satisfied that we are seeing eye to eye with that level of professional courtesy, so I will be excusing him today.
Further discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Kerwin?
I'm glad that Mayor Pro Tem Howard brought up the charter itself, because really the reason we're having these budget meetings right now are because we're required to by the charter as we transcend the budget. So these meetings are a priority and importance. Anyone who is missing a meeting for any reason, I feel that's fine. Again, I just would prefer to see it recorded as either here or not. I'm not here to judge why someone is not present tonight. All I know is that when we take that oath of office, we say that we're going to do the business of the city, and the business of the city is done in the public meetings. So it doesn't matter whether you're with your husband in the hospital or at a national conference. I'm not making any judgment on any of that. It's either here or not here.
Further discussion? Vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor Schilling.
No?
Councilor Beltramini.
Yes.
Fleming.
Yes.
Kerwin.
Yeah. No.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Slater.
Yes.
Motion passes. This evening, we have a proposed fiscal year 2010-2011 annual budget and 3-year budget. We're going to talk about capital projects, enterprise fund, 3-year budget, and the wrap-up. Mr. Zerle?
Thank you, Your
Going
Honor.
over to you.
Council. Mr. Lamorato will start us off with capital projects and enterprise fund. I'll have a segue into the 3-year budgets, and then John will finish that up, and then we'll go to wrap up.
Okay. Before John begins, could I just make one comment with regard to the fact that we've had, and I realize that Councilman Howard could have his wedding planned for now, but he's missed the 3 study meetings. So I would hope when he gets back in town, he says he'll be back Saturday, that he would meet with staff on Monday before the council meeting to talk about things in the budget that he had questions or concerns on, and not expect at the next council meeting to have us go over everything that we've gone over in 3 meetings. So I'm hoping that maybe someone in your office would contact him Monday and request that he do that. I don't know if he's watching the meeting, maybe he is, I don't know.
We plan on doing more than that. I'm going to have Cindy Stewart make a DVD of the 3 of the budget sessions that we have, and indicate that if Mr. Howard Lack wishes to watch them and have any questions thereof, you can feel free to contact us.
Good, thank you, thank you. That, because it's important information that he have too, and we don't need to repeat it all, of course, next Monday. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lamrado.
City Council, today's May 3rd, we have our schedule here. The second study session to cover capital projects, enterprise funds, our 3-year budget, and the wrap-up. And May 10th is the scheduled public hearing and adoption for the budget. And then tonight we'll cover those areas in that order. Our capital projects fund is funded by 1.53 mills, our millage, our property taxes. That'll generate about $7.2 million for fiscal year 2010-11, as compared to $7.9 million for this current year property taxes. We have the same millage rate that we have planned here, and the main reduction again is due to the reduction in the drop in the taxable value. We'll cover the revenues and expenditures, department expenditure summaries, list of maps of projects, various large projects, expenditure by objects, and capital expenditures for all funds. The capital revenue sources, once again, these are by funds that we have. We have a total of about $39.7 million in capital projects for 2010-11. $28 million coming from the capital projects fund in total. The golf courses, $646,000. The sewer fund, $2.9 million. Water fund, $6.4. Fleet maintenance, $1.6, and the aquatic center, $61,000. Just a broad summary here of all. This is for all capital projects. Again, the $39.7 million. These are the various projects by category that are included in the budget. It's a breakdown by type of capital expenditure, and the main focus of tonight will be on the capital projects fund itself. We've already covered some of these items when we talked about those individual funds last week, and we'll talk about some of the enterprise projects tonight when we talk about those funds. But the main focus right now will be on the capital projects fund. High-profile projects, local roads, $3.2 million, major roads, $7.7, water main, $6.4, sewers, $2.9 million, sidewalks, $500,000, the transit center is in there at $9.4 million. First category, the capital project can be broken down into are called land improvements, and of our total capital projects, we have $4.6 million that are classified as land improvements. We do have at your place a schedule that gives you a brief 2 or 3 sentence description of each of these areas that we'll be talking about tonight. And they're contained on pages 242 through 250 in your budget document itself. There's a page reference on that, and it gives you a brief description. I'll briefly cover over these, and if there's any questions at the end, we can go over those. But in Parks and Recreation, to start off with, we have, well, before I start that, land improvements, the revenue sources to fund the land improvements. We have, and this, for land improvements, we have the Community Development Block Grant funds, will fund about $92,640 for these improvements. The Sylvan Glen Golf Course will fund $600,000 of land improvements, and the capital funds themselves will revenue source about $3.9 million. That's where we're getting the funding for these land improvements. Nature Center is listed there at $55,000. That includes some boardwalk repairs, barn repairs, and some fence and gate repairs for a total of $55,000. Milverton Park improvements, which we've already approved the Community Development Block Grant funding for that project. That'll be for some improvements to that park. I believe a shelter and some playground structure equipment. Continuing, Parks and and Recreation, we have future park development, the trail system, and civic center improvements, totaling close to $3.8 million. These projects are included in the 2010-11 budget, but they are being reserved at this point to offset service reductions in the 2011-12 and 2012-13 budget. So those three projects are contained in the capital funds, but they're being reserved at this point, and that's what our budget document calls for. Golf course fund, Sylvan Glen Golf Course, $600,000. This is for irrigation system improvement, a major project. There's some very original piping and so forth under the ground for the Sylvan Glen Golf Course. We're reserving these funds to build up to the appropriate amount, which probably is going to be around $750,000 if some of those improvements are made. These are all funded by the Sylvan Glen Golf Course. Department of Public Works has a municipal parking lot improvements around $90,000. They have a schedule that they go over all the various municipal lots we do have throughout the city, and it's from surface repair to restriping and so forth, and to keep those lots in good condition. Next major category or section of capital outlay is called buildings and improvements. We have about $10.6 million allocated for that, and the major portion of that is the transit center at about $9.4 million. The building improvements revenue sources are made up of state and federal grants of $9.4 million, and capital funds about $1.2 million. It should be pointed out that there's no other money in this current capital budget for the transit center. We've already spent some city funds, we've already spent some state funds for the design and so forth of the facility. As it stands right now, and then when the final project comes in at, there may not be a need for any other city funds. There are no matching requirements for the federal grants that we have received. So other than the $9.4 million, there's no other city money in the capital budget for the transit center. Yes.
Next question. On the transit center, how much of that is federal money? It's over $8 million of that?
Well, most all of it is, but federal and state.
Well, the money funneled through the state is $250,000 for the LED lighting. However, that's federal funding, ultimately.
So it's all federal money.
This number is all federal, right? All
That number's all
money.
federal.
Okay.
So we've got about 1.3 million that's taxpayer.
Well, we don't,
level
yeah, we
Not
haven't,
yet.
that has been taken away. We only spent about 100,000 or so of that money. We had a state grant, which was in the previous budgets for, I think it was almost 500,000, which is for the design and preliminary engineering and so forth. So we only spent roughly around $100,000 of city money on this total project. As it stands, depending on what the final cost comes in at, we have no money in the budget over and above this for the project, and there's no matching funds required at this point. Additional buildings and improvements, $418,000 for public works facilities. There's a fuel pump replacement, new roof on the streets garage, re-roofing of the salt dome, and floor drain replacement. And I think in your handout there's several other projects that make up the $418,000. Continuing, City Hall office renovation. There's $160,000 just put in reserve there. That with the restructuring and so forth of city offices and departments, there may be some need for some consolidation and revamping of certain department and workspace areas, either here or at another facility, whatever may be the case in the future. But that's just a reserve funding for if there's any need for those type of projects. Museum improvements, we have $75,000. That's to strip and paint the print shop and the town hall, and also for paver pathways replacements, for rid of a lot of the trip hazards and things like that that are on the property. Next category is equipment general, about $400,000. Revenue source for this equipment is $209,000 from drug forfeiture funds, $50,000 from the PEG access fee, cable franchise fee, $83,500 from the capital fund, and about $40,000 from the water and sewer funds. Some of the major highlights of the police department is $307,500. A lot of this is for the training center, video conferencing equipment, and also for the drug enforcement money. The money we receive from drug forfeitures need to be expended on drug forfeiture-related activities, capital nature, whatever that may be. So that's kind of out there. If we don't receive that drug forfeiture money, then there would not be any expenditures for these capital only items. Next category is equipment office, $300,000. We have information technology, about $71,000 for backup and exchange upgrades, server upgrades. The police department, $165,000 for some scheduling software and servers to go with that. And the fire department is also a portion of the video conferencing equipment. The funding for these projects comes from the capital fund of $205,000. Sewer fund $10,000, and the IT fund $71,000. Next, we have vehicles, $1.6 million in vehicles. Fleet maintenance is almost all of that amount, and the Sylvan Glen Golf Course is $46,100. That's for the our lease payment schedule on the golf carts that we have at Sylvan Glen. Apparatus replacement of $500,000 for the fire department. We're starting a new reserve now. This is the first year. We just purchased some equipment this current year. We're starting a new reserve of that. We try to put away $500,000 a year. The funding sources for the vehicles, fleet maintenance fund picks up $1.6 million. Sylvan Glen Golf Course $46,100, and capital funds $500,000. Next category, public works construction projects of $11.6 million. We have $7.7 million in major roads, $3.2 million local sidewalks, $500,000 drains, $220,000. Funding sources for these projects: state and federal grants, $400,000. Oakland County, $200,000. Major streets fund, $1 million, and capital funds, $10 million. As far as the major roads fund, here's a map for the 2010-11 project. Give you a brief summary, a breakdown of the $7.7 million. Right-of-way costs are about $2.1 million of that for the John R. Square Lake to South Boulevard project, and also for Rochester, Barclay to Trinway. We have PE cost, professional engineering costs of $275,000, $200,000 for Livernois, Long Lake to Square Lake, and $75,000 for the Rochester, Barclay to Trinway. And construction, $5.3 million. $250,000 for the Waddles, east and west of Rochester Road, $750,000 Coolidge from Maple to Gulfview, $200,000 Rochester Road, Chopin to Larchwood, $300,000 in tri-county, tri-party projects, $650,000 for the Rochester Torpy to Barclay project, $2 million for Beach Road, Waddles to South Boulevard improvements, $50,000 for crack sealing, and $1 million for slab replacement. So again, the funding sources for these: $400,000 from federal and state, $1 million from the Major Streets Fund, $6.1 million from the Capital Fund, and $200,000 from Oakland County. We also have scheduled out current year plus looking out 5 years. So over the next 6 years, we have various amounts that we have scheduled out, and through the next 3 years, those funds are included within the capital projects funding in our 3-year budget. The total is $27.8 million in major road improvements over the next 6 years. This is the map. You can basically see the various sections of the city where those 6 years of capital improvements will take place. Now, there's a detailed description of each project on pages 278 through 288 in the budget document, which also lists some of the cost savings by performing these type of maintenances to those roads. Next, we have our industrial road, our average condition chart. And I'll just briefly cover this, and if there's any other further questions, we have Steve Van Dett and Bill Hootery here to answer those. But this basically shows you what $1 million a year would do, $1.5 million, and $2 million. And they're rated either good, fair, or poor. Basically, we need approximately $2 million a year to stay in the good area of the chart. And dropping below that, we kind of will start to fall down into the fair area, upper fair area, which is quite a large segment there. In 2010-11, we have $2 million budgeted. 2011-12, $2 million. 2012-13, $1 million. And 2013-14, 2015-16, about $500,000 per year. Major road condition at $2 million a year will show a slight improvement in the fair category. $1.5 million is the red line there, and then the blue is at $1 million. And our colors there. We are, on an average, over the next 6 years, we'll be spending about $3.6 million on major roads, on average. Anywhere from $5.7 million this year to $2 million the following year. And the rest of the years are 3.5, 3.5, 3.6, 3.0. So, over the next 6 years, that's what our schedule looks like, and with that, we should be able to improve our overall condition of major roads up towards approaching the good area. That type of investment. And once again, we have the first 3 years of the 6 years budgeted and accounted for.
And John, those are city major roads.
Right. Local road fund is $3.2 million. The summary of projects: $2 million for slab replacement, $1 million for asphalt overlay, $100,000 for crack sealing, and $50,000 for contingency. The funding source for this comes all from our capital projects fund. Over the current, or 2010 budget year, plus going out 5 years, we're spending $3.2 million each of those years, for a total of about $18.9 million over the next 6 years for local roads. That gives you an idea of the various projects color-coded by year and when they'll be done in what sections of the city for the 6-year project. Local road, average condition. So again here, $2 million will, actually $2 million kind of is the lower line there. It kind of drops off. We do $2 million a year. First couple years we stay in the same, roughly the same condition, and we start to drop off the last 3 years. If we just do $2 million. $3 million is the red line there. We hang a little bit longer and some slight improvement. $5 million, you can see it actually will pick up a little bit going out a couple years, and at the end there we get a little bit more closer to the good. In our budget, once again, we have $3.2 million budgeted over the next 6 years. And we should roughly, follow or a little better than the red line there. There's a little drop off in about 3 or 4 years down the road by just doing $3 million a year. If there's any questions on any of those 3 charts, do you want to handle those now, or Bill or Steve?
Councilman Kerwin?
I'm curious if someone could speak to the 2013 where there's a drop regardless of where the 5 year. Thank you.
What's happening here is that in the first 3 years, whether it's $2 million, $3 million, or $5 million, we're not quite keeping pace with the deterioration. And what happens in after year 3 is that those roads that are in the good range in these first 3 years, they are deteriorating, and we weren't able to catch them in those first 3 years, and suddenly they're down. And so whether it's 2 or 3 or 5 million, the pavement management system suggests that that's what's going to happen.
Steve, Your Honor, if I may, I don't have the information in front of me, but if I recall, to bring the local road system 260-some miles up to good immediately would cost about $70 million.
To do that in 1 year. That's correct.
That was in that big report, I think we had
Right.
the first, Councilman Kerwin?
Well, I'm wondering if there's an investment in 2012, if there's some sort of, we're not talking 70 million, but if there's some investment there that would bridge the 2012-2013.
Well, as you can see, in the first 3 years, there's not a whole lot, even though you're spending $2 million more, there's not a whole lot of difference between the 3 and the 5 million. And then in the third year, after the third year, things drop off. So conceivably, theoretically, you could spend $3 million in the first 3 years, and then if the city's able to add to that in the third year, that would be a beneficial thing to do, to try to catch those roads that you couldn't catch here, but you catch them there before they take that dip.
Well, that might be something we want to flag as we go forward and talk about some of those.
And you're speaking of roads that would be in the good category until they fell into the fair category, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So right now, we have approximately 76% of our roads are in the good category,
Right.
24% in the fair to poor. But what this is showing is the overall average of the entire system.
Any other questions on these 3 charts? Mr. Amaro requested if he has questions on those about the roads. Okay, we'll go to the next section with sidewalks.
Talk about sidewalks. We have $500,000 in the 2010-11 budget. Funding sources, we get around $150,000 of that's from residential sidewalk invoicing and $350,000 from the capital fund itself. We have, as part of the projects here, we have $300,000 for residential sidewalk replacement, sections 22 and 23 of the city, $100,000 for sidewalk replacement in some major roads, and then $100,000 for sidewalks for new construction, filling gaps and so forth. Sidewalk fund, once again, next year's budget going out 5. For a number of years, we've put around $500,000 a year in for sidewalks, roughly in that same breakout that we have for new replacement. Total about $3 million over the next 6 years in sidewalks. We do have funded again the first 3 years in our 3-year budget of $500,000 a year. 6-year project, those are all various locations where work will be done in the next 6 years. Drain fund, $220,000 for drain projects. Revenue source, capital fund for $200,000, Sylvan Glen Golf Course for $20,000. The $200,000 is for retention drains for pumps, replacement and fence repair and replacement around a lot of our detention basins. And we have $20,000 for some continuing work on the Sylvan Glen stream bank stabilization project, which is funded by Sylvan Glen. Our future needs, looking once again next year and 5 years out. The number is quite low this year, but it goes up to roughly $1.4 million, $1.6 million in one of the years out there, for a total of about $7.1 million needed for storm drain work over the next 6 years. These are the various locations of some of those projects, looking out over 6 years. That covers $39.7 million in capital projects. But we will discuss the 2011-12, 2012-13 capital funding when we talk about the 3-year budget.
Okay.
That's the last segment of our meeting tonight. This is mainly meant to cover 2010-11 for next year. If there's any questions on those capital projects for the 2010-11 budget, we could handle those now and then take the other ones when we talk about the 3-year budget.
Okay, any for this budget? Councilwoman?
Yes, on the sidewalk construction, the $500,000 per year, are we still in the process of taking out sidewalks in certain areas because they're not handicap accessible and actually replacing it with sod now? Is that part of this $500,000?
No, I don't think we replace it with sod.
If it wasn't,
I don't-
you're speaking of an area that's
Talking
not.
about taking out
in a corner.
sidewalks and
Yeah,
replacing it with
we're
sod?
taking the walks, the curb cuts, I call them, from the sidewalk to the street. Some areas I've noticed are not handicap accessible. I've noticed we've been taking out some of those and actually filling it in with dirt and grass. Is that a project that's ongoing? Or?
I can respond to that. There was a few sections of the city when they were originally designed, they were in conflict with today's standards for crossing at driveways and other locations where weren't appropriate. Those few sections of the city have been taken care of. There's a few minor locations around, but the majority of what you're speaking to has all been taken care of. So we're not anticipating taking out large amounts of sidewalk and filling in with sod in any of our future projects. But there'll be a few of those in each of those projects because it's not appropriate to take a sidewalk, run it across the street, and drop people into a driveway approach on the other side.
I have a question with regard to the nature center land improvements. The boardwalk repairs, farm repairs, and fence and gate repairs. I'm assuming that with the closing of the nature center, those are scheduled to be done because it's a safety concern?
Yes. Well, even
Why?
the closing of the
why-
nature center is not, it's not going to be closed per se. The property will still
Right.
be open. And those are, a lot of them are safety and security
Right.
issues.
That's what I assumed of the $55 million, but, you know, people would question about why we would be spending money at the nature center if
The park will still be open. The
Right.
building closure, there are limited hours for the actual building being open, but the park will be open. I'm sure Carol, the exact,
Okay.
dawn and dusk most of the year, except for in the wintertime, I think. The building has some restricted hours.
I just wanted to make sure people understood that those, it would be accessible that way, but that the building would not. Okay, thank you. Other
Okay.
questions on that, Councilman Kerwin?
A little comment. I found it helpful, Mr. Lombardo, as you went through when you identified the sources of some of the funding, which you began to do as we went through, because that's helpful for people who are watching and don't have the big binders that we do or haven't accessed that on the website. So I do appreciate that. Secondly, even some of the simple definitions, there's a simple definition included about major roads as opposed to local, as opposed to industrial. So it's helpful to inform all at the time if we could have a quick definition of a major road. And then I have one final question.
Steve or Bill, you want major road, local road, industrial road?
Collector Street.
I guess in our vernacular, a major road would be the major mile roads, the grid roads, Square Lake, Waddles, Rochester, Stevenson, those types. A local road would be like a local subdivision road, 28-foot wide concrete pavement. An industrial road is something in between, like a beach road falls into an industrial category, not in Northfield Parkway. Something other than the major grid miles or something other than a local subdivision street.
Thank you.
And the major road is defining here really had to do with traffic or how much traffic. So some of even our roads.
There are specific definitions in Act 51, and that's one.
The one that you were.
Yeah, because in Act 51, an industrial road can either be a major road or a local road, depending on what it's served. Like the non-nutrient district is actually an industrial road under the local road category. Northfield Parkway is an industrial road under the major road category. It's served a larger area.
Another one?
And this, I don't know if we're going to get to another time, but I have a little bit of a concern, and that is the 6-year capital improvement plan drain fund. Is this the time to ask that a little bit?
We're talking about the first year, like the first year now, and we have the second, we'll be covering the second and third year. If it in general over the.
It's general, it's 274.
Yeah, I think if Bill or.
274?
274. And it's, my concern with the watersheds has to do with the regulations, the 6 minimum measures that municipalities must address. And we have had a person in charge of addressing some of those, including the public education and outreach. And that was quite a benefit to attend some of that when we had panels and they included and they were informative. My question really is, will that take a different format in public education and outreach now that we're changing personnel a little bit? And that we will continue to comply with the minimum measures that are mentioned here.
We will be complying with all of our state stormwater permit requirements. We did in December lay off our environmental specialist, and we have since supplemented, filled that void with consultant services, and we also hired a part-time environmental specialist. So the combination of consultant and part-time will not only fulfill our requirements and continue our education component, but we will also save money in the process.
Somebody else had a question? Member Tim Fodor?
Yeah, going back to the sidewalks, I'm looking at the detail. Out of the $500,000, we'll spend approximately $300,000 for residential sidewalk replacement, $100,000 for major road sidewalk replacement, $100,000 for new construction. I think in a normal environment, this would be perfectly fine, but I have some concern, you know, in this environment, and I may have difference of opinion, spending money on new sidewalks and being very cautious not to replace sidewalks unless they're absolutely necessary. $500,000 is a lot of money. If we can trim money out of the capital budget this area, and I've got a couple of other areas as well, we can put it toward the general fund or save jobs.
Okay, well.
So I have some concerns about that. I know we don't want to have lawsuits for tripping and so forth, but we need to be really careful about spending $500,000, especially constructing new sidewalks.
The thing is, we're cutting out the trail system, putting that, you know, talking about it for those monies reserved to offset reductions in future budgets. And in my view, when I see people using the sidewalks, they're using them for biking, for walking, and if they're being repaired, many times there are in an area where there's difficulty where people would fall or trip or whatever, and so we have a duty to repair those and fix those. I think those are the ones that they look at and do first.
Right. New
You're
construction.
having
is a couple
well,
hundred.
with new construction though, we've had people requesting for years to have sidewalks in certain areas so they can be connected together. For example, if they're biking along and they're biking on the sidewalk, and then there's no sidewalk, then they have to go out to the street and they go back on, and it depends. I mean, if it's adults who are expert bikers, it's one thing, but you get families with kids and you know, groups of people biking. I think it depends on what level of cyclists they are.
Yeah, and understand that just in normal circumstances, we need to bring it up, but $100,000 or $200,000 to add new sidewalks, new construction is a lot of money in this day and time. Okay. So that's one point. I have a couple of others.
Did you want someone to explain where those are occurring? Is that
No,
what
I
you're
know. I've already had a conversation
Oh, okay.
with
All
Mr.
right.
Zerlag about this.
Okay.
And so I just have to express my opinion. I think in this environment, we need to look for ways to save $100,000 where we can, or $200,000 where we can. And I just wish we would look at that very closely and see if we can't trim something out of that $500,000 sidewalk fund, put it toward the general funds, or put it toward roads.
Councilman Kerwin?
Just in response, it's good to have a conversation like this. I was thinking really of it more in terms of where we're doing new roads. For example, Waddles. The time really to do the sidewalk is when you're doing that road at the same time. It makes sense in every way, and it is a cost saving. So when new sidewalks in conjunction with a new road, and you're seeing that, additions. There had been none before. That is a school route. That's the time to do that kind of thing. So I think depending upon the particular, that would make a difference. But I know in terms of new construction and new sidewalks at the same time, there is a cost saving and an added benefit to doing it that way. So I would be looking at it in terms of that.
Specifically at Waddles, if I'm not mistaken, there's a sidewalk there already, but due to the construction, it's going to have to be taken out, so we need to replace that. I understand if we've got a sidewalk there, we're tearing up the construction, because our sidewalks there, I walked that. It's hard to walk now with the construction. But there's some other cases where we're actually new construction, where we're just adding sidewalks where there have not been sidewalks before. That, I think we should take a closer look at.
Councilman Felton?
It seems to me that on major roads, we only require sidewalks on one side. Is that still true? It was just on the north or just on the west?
Both sides, and
Both
it's
sides now.
8 foot wide on both sides.
Well, with gas going to $4 a gallon, I think more and more people are going to be walking and biking, and we have some obligation to give them a safe way to do that. Now, 150,000 of that 500,000 is invoiced, I think you said. So it's 350,000 that we spend on replacement and connecting pieces. So if we can get our town major roads, particularly, or those into the bus routes for kids, that sort of thing. And it sounds like that's pretty much the priorities of what we're still doing. So I'd like to save $100,000 too, but I don't want somebody falling into a major road.
Okay.
And another question,
I don't want to take the whole floor. Someone else has a point. I've got another point. Off the sidewalks.
Okay.
I think I don't get the support for sidewalks. I understand that. I had to say that. The replacement rescue pumper, the 1991 pumper in service at Fire Station 3, we've got $500,000 in the budget this next year for that. My question is that pumper obsolete? Normally we wouldn't be having this discussion, Chief, but in this situation, is this a pumper that we absolutely have to replace? It's obsolete. I know it's a 1991. I wouldn't know it was parked in front of me, okay? So I need your expertise. Is this something we could delay? Is this absolutely mandatory because it's obsolete, or what's the story?
Our fire apparatus fleet is a lot like our roads.
Yes.
Okay? Pay now or pay more later. So basically, we have about 28 vehicles that are on a 20-year replacement plan. And that particular truck is 20 years old. ISO gives us credit to 20 years, so we will start to get deducts from ISO, so that will impact our ISO rating negatively. The other problem is, what we see is we keep trucks about a year too long. Because typically in that last year, because we pay time and materials out of our budget for those, they're not lease rates for the motor pool, we will have problems. That truck has already had, we rehabbed the lights on it, we rehabbed the generator on it. We do all those things somewhere around that 10-year range, trying to get that second 10 years. Most communities keep their fire apparatus between 10 and 14 years. At 20 years, we're pushing the envelope, okay? So, I mean, we can certainly take it to 21, we can take it to 22. It's just a question of, and the big thing for us is downtime. When that truck is down for 3 days for maintenance, that is, you know, all the runs that occur during that 72-hour period receive less service than they would under normal conditions. So it really is a reliability issue. There's only two things that we use on every run we go on: the radios and the apparatus. And those are the two critical elements that we really pay a lot of attention to.
Okay, so follow up. We're on a 20-year replacement. You're saying most communities are on a 15-year average replacement, so we're pushing them up. And when you said that we'd lose our ISD rating, is that insurance rating?
ISO is Insurance Services Office, and that's the organization that comes through and rates the fire department to determine how much insurance premium the residents pay on their homes and the businesses pay on the commercial structures. We currently are a Class 3 rating, the top 4.5% of the United States. You know, just through personnel attrition alone, we may be dropping anyway. But you know, when you start adding up personnel attrition, apparatus deferment for replacement, and all those other things, it can make that rating drop more dramatically over a shorter period of time.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anybody else have questions on this section so far, the capital? Anybody else? Okay, Airport Employment?
Again, the library, we talked about this, and I know we got an excellent explanation as to why we need to spend $425,000, but again, I just have to voice a concern. I know there's a lot of concern about this. I hope we can find a way to keep the library open, but if it's the belief of this city management that we're not going to be able to keep the library open, then spending $425,000 next year is a lot of money. And I understand, I heard the argument that I still have to voice a concern spending that much money. We spent over $700,000 last year, so that's a concern to be spending that much money with the plan that we're going to shut down. I hope we can find a way to keep it open. That money's well spent.
Two things, Ryan.
I asked Mr. Zerlag about that today and also talked to Mrs. Russ about it because of the amount, and I had a satisfactory answer about it. Yes, Mr. Zerlag?
Yes, the first thing is that it's not the belief of city management that the library is going to be closed. It's the direction of the governing body to have public safety elements take precedent over quality of life elements. That's number one. And that's up to you to change if you so desire. Secondly, I'd like to have Kathy Russ indicate why we need to operate like a new library as opposed to a used bookstore.
I think you have to keep in mind what the business of a public library is. The library's business, if you will, is to provide current and accurate information to the people who use it. And people use the library for any number of reasons. But, you know, think of it, if you have a medical condition, you would want information from 2010, you would want information from 2002, for example, financial information. Kids who go to school. And many people cannot afford to purchase the materials that they need either for education, recreation. I think of kids who are being homeschooled. Their parents can't necessarily go on Amazon.com or go to Barnes & Noble and purchase all of those materials. The library's business is to provide current information to people. The other thing that is a point that really didn't get brought up is that the library's materials, strangely enough, do provide a source of revenue for the city. If people don't check out materials, they don't keep them overdue. If they don't keep them overdue, they don't have to pay fines. So there is that. We also have a pretty sizable collection of rental items. The current popular bestsellers, we do rent those to people for $0.25 a day. We rent the current DVDs. And that is a pretty significant source of revenue. So if you eliminate library materials, you eliminate a majority of your revenue, and you do take away people's reasons to come to the library. They will use other services. There's a texting service. You can text a certain number and pay $1 for a reference question. The public library provides that service to people.
Okay. Would you explain a little bit about when the subscriptions to, for example, for periodicals and newspapers, et cetera, because of our size and population, the use of those materials and when you have to subscribe to those?
Absolutely. Just to give you a frame of reference in terms of the service population of Troy, I was director at the Centerline Library for 5 years. Centerline Library has a population of 8,500 people, and the materials budget was $40,000. The circulation was about 50,000 items per year. Population of Troy is 10 times that, and so in terms of supply and demand, in order to meet the demand of 80,000 people, we need to have a supply of materials. As far as the budget, we do have existing commitments to many vendors for databases, for magazine subscriptions, for our print materials, and those are ongoing commitments, which obviously if the library closes, we will have to break those contracts. But we do have certain obligations, and that $425,000 essentially covers those obligations for the next year.
When is the time frame for when those contracts would be terminated? The library closing a year?
Well, there are different contract renewal dates, but I've been working with our vendors to give them heads up as to the situation. They are, obviously if the library closes, those contracts will come to an end, and we're in discussions about if there will be any financial repercussions for terminating those contracts early.
Okay. Did anyone else have questions on that, Councilman Kerwin?
Not a question, just more of a comment, Kathy. Again, this is a library, it's scheduled to run next year. It's not a reading room. So all of the things that are expected in the library, and I absolutely agree, you've already cut that down to 400, which will keep the periodicals, a lot of your software going, a lot of the availability for everyone. So although trimmed in hours and trimmed in staff, the library needs to keep at a level so that everyone can use it. And finally, I know Mayor Pro Tem Fleming has mentioned jobs a few times. I think one of the most crucial things that's going on right now in the library is the whole section of jobs. The people who come and access that material, the wonderful people who work and support that, the investment by Friends of the Troy Public Library into that, and the recognition through a grant to work in that. So I think that investment is necessary and important.
Is it half the budget that it was this past year?
It's not quite half.
Less, almost half? Okay. Because I asked about that too. I know we had some people that were concerned. They said, well, the library's closing, why are we still buying things? But I think that they should understand the answer of why it's open, when it's open. We need to have those materials available at that time. And the other clarification is that the book drop is no longer a part of the budget.
Absolutely not.
Someone had seen it in the last budget and thought it was still there, and that is not the case. It would have been nice to have, or would have actually helped us with cost if the library were open. And it was the most requested item.
For years.
For years. And we got this new situation. Yes. Any other questions? Councilman Slater?
Part of that money is for buying books, though, isn't it?
Yes.
We are buying books.
Yes.
For adults and children.
Yes.
So if the library closed, you could sell the books for revenue?
I don't know what the disposition of the collection will be, but I imagine that's one option.
I would suspect we would do something like that.
Well, the other thing is too that collections are saved over a period of years, and hopefully, something would happen over a period of years where we could have a library again when the sufficient funds are coming in on a sustained basis. I know that there are people that are saying if we close the library, it'll just be closed forever. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but again, you know, we're projecting down the road, we have to see what the revenues are.
There is a group of people out there that do not want us to spend $425,000 this year, and to those people, you know, there are reasons that we are doing that. Maybe we could even get some money back if we have to. So.
Yes, I think, did Mr. Zerling, did you want to say something else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Councilman Kerwin?
I think that there has been some misinformation
Yes.
out there, and that gets blogged out there frequently. And as we look carefully at this budget, and I know that we're looking for 100,000 here and 150 and trying to put it, let's bear in mind that we're short 18 million from the state. I know that Councilmember Beltramini has spoken long and hard. I mean, I go to this all the time regarding revenue sharing. Constitutionally guaranteed. We collect it. We're not getting it. So when we're looking for $4 million to run the library, that 18 million over time has brought us to this point. And I think people who are angry and upset at this council for making these decisions, please bear in mind that we've sent that money to the state on the promise that it would be returned in revenue sharing, and we have not seen it. And many of us have been up there time after time after time. So show us the money. That's where the state is.
And again, with it being, with revenues coming in even 2 million less than what was projected 6 months ago, we have to look ahead not only to this budget, but as we're going to talk about later this evening, the 3 years out, a 3-year budget. So those are very sobering facts. Okay, any more on this section? Okay, Don, you ready for the next section?
The last set of our city funds are the enterprise funds. The enterprise funds are used to account for services provided to citizens and users financed primarily by user charges. Here we have the Aquatic Center, Sylvan Glen Golf Course, Sanctuary Lake Golf Course, the sewer fund, and the water fund. Start off with the Aquatic Center. We have revenue about $487,000 projected for 2010-11. $170,000 of that's from season pass sales, and $287,000 from daily passes and programs. We have expenditures from $600,000, including depreciation. Depreciation makes up, which gives us an operating loss of about $113,000. Depreciation makes up $170,000 of those expenses. Taking it out, which is not a cash outlay for depreciation, they're a cash position are about $57,000 to the good. That's projected for the current year. Looks like they're going to come in around $31,000 to the good if you take out depreciation expense. They do have $61,000 for capital outlay. There's painting, pump replacement, cave repairs, security cameras, and sand filter repairs make up the $61,000. Once again, their actual cash flow will just about cover those expenditures for this next year. Sylvan Glen Golf Course. As I'm sure you're aware, we are and have been reviewing bids for the privatization of both golf courses. These budgets were put together, they would have to be adjusted if we were to go the privatization route. But just go over the revenues, what we're projecting here. For Sylvan Glen, about $1,020,000 in actual charges for golf. They have some rents and interest income, rents from Camp Ticonderoga, and also from the communication tower that is located on the facility. The revenue will cover the operations plus the capital improvements. We have expenses of about $951,000, and that includes depreciation again, of course. And The revenues that will generate it will even have to cover all the operations, plus provide money for the capital outlay. Projecting about 45,000 rounds of golf for Sylvan Glen. It's up about 1,000 from this current year's budget. And once again, the capital outlay, it's a $750,000 total rough estimated irrigation system project. And we've been building funds towards that over the last several years. Sanctuary Lake Golf Course generate around almost $1 million in revenue. They have small rental income from the restaurant cafe operation there. We're projecting around 26,000 rounds at Sanctuary Lake. Total revenue of a little over $1 million. Expenditures, including debt service, $1.9 million. That also includes depreciation. Back out depreciation, which again is not a cash item per se, at the $297,000. They're about over $600,000 short in revenues meeting expenses. This current year looks like it might come around $640,000 revenues under expenses. Once again, both these courses are under review, and we're looking at privatization with some guarantees basically in it that we would not be any worse off than what we have been, and there's incentives to go much over and above a certain dollar amount. But we're reviewing those, and that'll be coming to council shortly. Water and Sewer Fund, just to look at a rate history here per 1,000 cubic feet. Our proposed rate for 2010-11 is $45.90 per 1,000 cubic feet. That's an overall rate adjustment of 40 cents per 1,000 cubic feet, or 0.9% increase in our your total water bill. The Detroit water rate, we've received a decrease in our rates of 9.3%, and that is somewhat reflected in our reduced water rate that we are proposing. It has a reduction of $1.32 per thousand. It's not the total amount, but it's a portion of that. We still have capital improvements and so forth that we do to the system of almost $4 to $5 million a year. Sewer fund has about an overall 9% increase in those rates, and that is being passed along. But the overall, they kind of offset each other, and it's a 0.9% overall rate increase. The water rate decrease was mainly attributable to the reduction in peak time usage by adherence to our water rate ordinance, which restricts the watering of lawns during the daytime. Looking at water consumption, some pretty wild swings there. Several years ago, and a lot of it is economy, a lot of it also is weather related too. When we have very hot and dry summers and so forth, you're going to get the consumption up there anyways. But the water restrictions and also the economy has basically really tailed that off the last 3 years here. We're projecting. What we do is we use a 5-year actual consumption and 1-year estimated consumption figures to estimate what we're going to use for 10-11 for our consumption numbers. And those are very close to what the city of Detroit has come up with in their estimated consumption in our contract talks with them. The average residential quarterly water bill, based on 3.9 thousand cubic feet per quarter, will equal about $179 per quarter. That's an increase of $1.56 per quarter from the current year. Or, to look at it, $6.24 a year for an increase on the average residential quarterly water bill. We do bill quarterly, and that's why the rate bill gets up there a little higher now as we go through the years here. But really, if you look at and break that down into a monthly bill, like most of your other utilities, that's about almost a little less than $60 a month for water usage. Looking at the sewer fund, proposed rate, and our estimated consumption is used there to generate about $12.7 million in revenue. We have expenditures of a little over $11 million, and that provides about $1.9 million towards capital improvements to the system. And this next year's budget, we have $2.9 million in capital improvements. We have about 397 miles of sanitary sewers throughout the city, and it's roughly about $1 million or so to replace each mile. We're putting about $2.9 million in improvements this year. And we do have reserves in there to handle that difference, $1 million here, so we're not covering the exact amount by the water rate. Otherwise, the sewer rate would have to be increased more than what it has been. So once again, the revenue will cover our operating expenses and provide $1.9 million towards our capital improvements. Sewer fund projects of the $2.9 million. There's a lot of sanitary sewer line improvements, flow metering projects, and sanitary sewer overflow mitigation projects. Those are found on detail on pages 352 and 353 of the budget. Once again, looking out over 6 years, the current year plus 5, we're over $2 million a year each of those years in improvements, about $13.3 million over the next 6 years. And once again, these improvements are made possible by the rates that we do charge. We do not have to issue bonds and incur the interest expense and other expenses to cover those projects. We'll look at the 6 years and where the various projects are scattered throughout the city. Water fund, revenues, expenses. Proposed rate times estimated consumption will generate almost $15 million in revenue. And we have total expenses of a little over $14 million. That leaves about $1.1 million towards our capital improvements. And here we do have $6.4 million in capital improvements this year. So once again, operating revenue covers all operations and maintenance plus $1.1 million towards our capital improvements. We have 540 miles of water mains in the city, and the replacement cost is a little under $1 million per mile. Looking at the $6.4 million, various projects throughout the city for 2010-11. Those are on pages 345 and 347 of the budget document for a description of those. 6-year projected of over $5 million per year in improvements to our system. That's why we have probably the fewer repairs than most cities do with actual water main breaks and so forth. Because they service and they replace those where we do have some issues. They take care of those, and there's a schedule to replace those out in the future. We'll be spending over the next 6 years about $32.5 million on water main replacements and improvements. And those are all funded again by the water bill, the water rates. 6-year capital improvements for the water fund. Once just a map showing you the various areas of the city. Basically hits almost all areas where there'll be some type of water improvements. Okay, any questions on the enterprise funds?
Questions on the enterprise fund, Councilwoman Beltran?
More a couple of comments than questions, and you've heard me say it before, but I need to say it in public. The golf funds. Since Sanctuary Lake is going to be probably, more than $500,000 shy on their debt service maybe, I'd like to see if there's some way where the golfers, if Sylvan Glen makes a profit, can help defray at least part of that before the general fund is begged for funds. If that requires putting them both into a single enterprise fund, or if the privatization allows us to do that, I'd just like to see the first cut off the debt come from golfers.
We are looking at that, and It's really just, it's a matter of accounting and setting up our books accordingly and reporting it in a certain way. It's a possibility. It's, you know, it's something we can look at.
I know it's more work for you, but I think that the people who like those kinds of services ought to pay as much toward the debt as they can. But again, I want to compliment you on balancing the water and sewer increases and decreases. Of the 50-cent increase, we're only passing 40 cents on to the consumer, and I appreciate the fund being able to absorb that extra dime. So thanks for making that happen.
Councilman Kerwin?
And we have talked about that before. We were dinged before because of not combining them. And I would support Councilmember Beltramini's idea of combining. How much do the golf courses together? Dinged, I mean, it's just that one report where someone pointed that out and said, well, that's the way we do it. So I would definitely encourage pointing them together. And I think for the community as a whole to see that when you do combine your two golf courses, yes, you have one where you bonded to acquire the land, but when you put them together, it is a different picture. And I think it would be important to look at that together, so I would certainly support that. On the water and sewer, reading the narrative was a little alarming. And all I want is assurance that we're being as prudent as possible in terms of replacing everything that we can. If there needs to be an additional investment in doing more, I think we should hear it.
I think we are following a set schedule for water main replacements. We've never cut back in that area at all. Those are all funded up. Bill or Steve want to, or sewer improvements?
I think in both water and sewer areas, I think our capital infrastructure investment has been good over the years, and it's been sufficient to keep pace with maintaining the system in a good condition. I don't see any reason to increase either water or sewer expenditures over the next 6 years.
And in terms of the Homeland Security, we will be up to date and everything will be fine with that now.
Absolutely.
And one of the reasons why Troy developed as it did is because years ago, the expenditure of funds for water and sewer to get those in place so that development could occur was a smart thing for councils many, many years to do. And then over the years, to keep those up, because that's like lifeblood of the community. You know, you have to have the water and sewer. Just look at history when Lewis lost their water and what happened to the community. Did you have a question, Councilman Fleming?
Yes.
A statement?
Thank you. Based upon water consumption being down, construction being down in the city, I'm referring construction to request for staking process on page 341 of the budget. We were at a peak in 2005 of probably about 19,000 requests for staking due to level of construction activity in the city. In 2009, we were just under 5,000, so almost a 75% drop in that function alone. And that's normal because, and I would anticipate it will be down. I hope I'm wrong. It's going to be down possibly even further. Not going to grow much in 2010. And I see we're in good shape as far as keeping up with our water hydrants being winterized, which is great. Our water main breaks, we're keeping those down. The question I've got, if you go to page 344, is one of manpower. And this is something we're looking at. In page 344, in 2009, 2010, there's an addition error there. There are really only 40 people in this department unless somebody's missed in here. It says 41. We're actually increasing the number of heads in 2010 and 2011 to 41.3. The .3 is a, or that's fine, probably moved from some other area to try to, help with, eliminating departments and so forth. The question is, we're really looking at this, and we've got quite a few summer laborers. I see we've had 6 for several years. We're keeping those. because I suspect the workload is down, just like we experienced in our building department with permits and so forth. The question I'm asking, have we reevaluated the staffing in this area? Because actually we've gone up rather than down.
Mark, respond.
Yes, we're in the process of totally looking at all maintenance functions within the city and centralizing them and looking at reorganizing complete departments and that are involved in maintenance in all arenas, whether that's streets, water, sewer, parks, buildings, grounds, and also we're going to have to start looking at snow removal on county roads, whether we're going to do that, and we're projecting that we're not going to. And then part of our staffing, reason that we have these staffing levels is to provide the snow removal within 24 hours after the event. And we need to maintain those staffing levels to maintain that protocol. But as we move into next fiscal year and we start looking at that, we're going to reassess whether we're going to maintain that. And if we don't maintain it, we're going to decrease size and also look at purchasing services and privatization of certain maintenance functions with that. So we are taking a look at that, and as we move into the next few months, we'll develop more information and report it back to council.
Okay, Councilor Klein?
So if I understand you correctly, these numbers are not set in stone. It could change as we move forward, we reevaluate the departments. It could be less. When you talk about snow removal and 24-hour response, it's great, but that's a seasonal thing. You can't staff around the year for a seasonal 3-month window, so we have to be careful about that too. And I know you know all these things, but I'm just saying we have to be really careful here with our staff because that's our largest budget item.
But we, just so that everyone knows, we utilize staff from the Streets Division, Water and Sewer, and also Parks and Rec to do the snow removal. So it's a multi-faceted task. But we're going to have to reassess that to see if we can provide that same level of service. And when we move to consolidate and privatize, we won't have those same staffing levels, and we won't be able to provide that same level of service.
Public Works is next on our list to analyze.
Yep. We're working on it right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, got break listed here next. It's about, all right, you want to take 10 minutes?
Sure.
10 minutes, so Mr. Zerle standing at the podium, ready to talk about the 3-year budget
Yes, I am. And just
that
want.
we asked for.
Yes, and I think that what you're doing is groundbreaking in terms of what other municipalities are not doing. And that's to take a look at essentially a depressing future, declining revenue line, and saying this is what's going to happen if we can't find a way to increase revenues and reduce expenditures in a balanced budget format. And I struggled with the opening slide for the presentation. Hope you don't think that I bumped my head like some staff members, but there's 5 stages of grief, and I wish to give an example of these 5 stages using something that probably happened to all of us when we jump in our car and it's cold and we're in the parking lot and it's dark and the battery's dead. Okay. Or it's in the morning and you have to go to work and your battery's dead and no one else is home. The first thing you do is, even though the battery's dead, you keep trying to turn that key on again and again. You know it's dead, but you don't believe it, you deny it. And then after a while, maybe 5 or 6 or 10 tries, you become angry, you may swear at the steering wheel, and are very upset that your battery's dead. Then you begin to essentially bargain with a piece of steel and plastic, and you tell the car, look, if you'll just start one more time, I promise I'll drive you to the dealership, I'll buy you a new battery and get your oil changed and wash the car, and I'll take good care of you. And that's also known, level 3, as unrealistic solutions or magical thinking. Oftentimes children engage in magical thinking. They'll have some fantastic solution to a problem that is just not realistic. Sometimes adults do as well. Then there's depression. And in your car, you may say, oh, man, I've been late for work 5 times in the last 2 weeks, and my boss is going to fire me, and I don't know what I should do. Hopefully, we've all segued into acceptance, and we say, you know what, I've got to get the new battery in my car. It may hurt my checkbook, but I'm going to call AAA, have them plop a battery in there, and drive to work, and you've accepted it, and you've moved on. And that's called reality-based decision-making. Now, this was not all my idea. About a month or so ago, I was on a panel discussion on restructuring government. I was one of 4 people. The other 3 were Bob Dado, the Executive Deputy Director for Finance, John McCullough, who is the County Drain Commissioner, and someone else whose name escapes me. That's because I had to leave early after my part of the presentation. But I had lunch with him, and he was, for lack of a better term, an organizational psychologist. And he told me, and the audience after I left, that city management, employees, city councils, as well as communities are going through these 5 stages of grief because of the reduced revenue line that we're all facing. This is what happened in Troy, and it's happening still. Every day I hear from residents, I hear from employees, one of the 4 issues. Once in a while, and with all of city management, we get acceptance to understand what's going on and what we have to do. And I applaud you as a governing body because you also accepted the reality of making reality-based decisions on a declining revenue stream. And what you did was told me to develop, or you selected essentially, what's known as option 1. And the premise of option 1 is that City Council instructed that the core competencies of public safety, which is police, fire, and public works, take precedence over other service venues. As such, there will not be a general fund subsidy for the library, museum, community center, and nature center. To do otherwise would slide toward option 2, which is what we've given you, which says everything stays open and we just make more cuts out of the public safety venue. Now, there's a clear distinction between option 1 and option 2 in terms of subsidizing the library. That's $4 million. It's not too clear with the community center. That's about $400,000 this year. We think we can probably make it within $100,000 of our operating costs. And our position always was that as long as there's not a general fund subsidy, absolutely it can stay open, and we're welcome. We would welcome any ideas to make that so. Just wanted to mention that. Of course, in both scenarios, we're not talking about 3 bond issues that are currently out in the community center facility, 1 general operating bond and 2 DDA bonds. And as the DDA director, you need to know that I'll be giving you a budget shortly, which has a extrapolation of us being upside down in terms of being able to make bond payments. But that's for a different discussion. You just need to know that. We're also trying to work, essentially, John, Mark, and Lori and I, on finding alternative revenue sources or finding a way to make those payments without going into default, or asking the general fund to make those payments for us. Three-year budget. A 3-year budget has an allocation of $3.8 million quality of life reserves going towards the land layoffs in the police department for 2011 and 2012. Excuse me. Too bad it's only water. I've been asked to indicate what the police department is going to look like after layoffs occur as a result of option 1, because even though I was told to essentially sacrifice the quality of life venues, our revenue line is declining at such a rate that we couldn't save jobs in the police, fire, and public works venues. I've also been asked to give an example of a department that has already gone through privatization, as well as departmental functions that have been consolidated. So what we did is provide 3 examples. One is the planning department, one is the manager's office, and then the third I'm going to turn this over to Chief Mayer to talk about the police department. I want to take it in this order because it's also hopefully a learning tool that will become easy to understand at first and more complex as it gets toward Gary's functions. There's a key that we have here, and the key is that if there's a box on the table with a white background, it means there's no change. So essentially, we had a planning director, and we still do, and we had a secretary too, and we still do. The area in green means that there's a cost savings, and we utilize a consultant now, 2 days a week, that took the place of a principal planner, and also does some of the work of 2 planners. And so 1 consultant takes the place of 3 full-time people. And Mark, do we have an estimated savings?
Over $250,000.
Is that this fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay. Then, the green, of course, saves money. It's cost efficient. The red means that the position already has been eliminated. Purple means that there's been a transfer from another department due to consolidation. And we've transferred essentially the inspector supervisor, 2 full-time zoning inspectors, and 2 part-time inspectors to the planning department as part of our overall strategy for economic development to put these venues under the planning director, and also to have the building department be solely building inspection and not interpretation of the zoning ordinance. What you won't see on this chart is something that's in yellow, and that is an indication of positions that will be eliminated. You'll see that primarily in the police department's table of organization. Any questions here on the planning department? Okay. A little more complicated. Now we have this is a consolidation fund. And again, what in white is what we had, and what I'm proposing that we keep. The areas in red are those that have been expunged, and the city manager's office has taken over those functions. One thing I've learned, this is talking to my old boss, Frank Gerstenecker, as well as my colleagues, and that is that whenever you have a function that's provided by a city that was performed by personnel, and the people go away, either the entire function or remnants of that function remain in situ, or they remain in place. And those functions never go down in the organization. They always go up in the organization. And so we now are taking, essentially, John, Mark, and I, the entire economic development function, Additionally, the areas in purple show consolidation from a community affairs department that we used to have that we essentially no longer have. I am proposing keeping Cindy Stewart to perform essentially the good functions that she does, which is to communicate with the function, is communicate with residents and businesses, to assist the council in inquiries that come in, and work out of our office at time. Also take care of the cable communications issues. You'll see in Chief Mayor's budget that she's also half-time in his department as well. We also have an economic development specialist that we transferred over to Pam Palentek. And when you are about 99% developed and you have a declining revenue stream, the only way that we can generate new revenues is to retain existing businesses and residences and attract new businesses. And we do that now. I mean, one of the three of us will go talk to the smallest business to encourage them to stay in Troy, or we'll talk to a large business to come into Troy. That's part of our everyday work ethic that we have now. We're also working on what's called the form-based code, which is more user-friendly. Mark can explain that if you have a need to, but that's also for a different topic. And we believe that to keep an economic development effort going, as well as to communicate with the public, this consolidation effort, which eliminates or has eliminated about 5 full-time positions, can keep going from this point forward. Any questions on this consolidation? Okay, I'm going to ask the chief to explain what's going on. Oh, I have one more thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention on him. And that is that I'd like to ask the council to modify our contribution to CMN from 0.5% to 0.25%. It's about $45,000. That'll also help pay for Mrs. Stewart. And I believe we have 81 people that utilize CMN.
Okay.
Okay? Is that all right? Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, Chief?
Good evening. In creating the organizational charts for the police department, we noticed when it went from the smaller version that you have to the larger version, that it tended to become a little more difficult to read because of the size and complexity of the department. So it's my intent to give a general overview and then break down by division to get the specifics that you need in detail. So we'll break this down into some parts. This is what we were referring to as our optimal staffing organizational chart, which is when we were at our maximum personnel levels. So this was 2005 and 2006. This is merely for comparison purposes, so you can see where we were at our high point. This would take that other organizational chart and then start changing it into what we're calling a transitional staffing overview. This would be from changes we've made to try to save money to the future of where we're going to end up going. We'll break this into smaller parts. This just gives you the whole overview of what the whole organizational chart looks like. The first part we'll discuss is what we call the transitional staffing of the administration. As you can see, we'll have a chief of police, so the secretarial staff, 5 of them. The deputy chief position is going out of our budget in the current budget cycle that we're entering into. We hadn't filled the position since I got promoted out of that position, so we left it vacant for cost savings, and we're going to eliminate it this budget. In the past, we eliminated the staff inspections lieutenant position over here, and the emergency response and preparedness position was eliminated. That was a sergeant. What we did there is we combined that sergeant position from emergency response and preparedness with the training sergeant to create an efficiency there. Then each of the divisions has a captain over it. Now you follow the chart down. The Investigation Services Division has a captain. And you can see in the past we eliminated the Special Investigations Lieutenant, so that position was gone. And then we anticipate This will be during the whole course of option 1 being exercised. So at the end of option 1, what we would look like is the direction we're starting to go now. We anticipate in the future we're going to be eliminating the juvenile unit. That's going to cause us some difficulties in some of the juvenile law things that we do. We're going to eliminate the criminal intelligence unit. That's going to be an additional sergeant, 2 police officers from criminal intelligence, 1 police officer that's currently assigned to the immigration custom enforcement team, which is going to be difficult because we were looking at that as a revenue source through some forfeitures to help us out, and 1 police officer from the narcotics enforcement team. Lockup operations, to your left there as you're looking at it, is in green to reflect the fact that we're making revenue off of that from our contract with the City of Clawson. So we make more than $100,000 annual with that contract with the City of Clawson. Next division is professional standards and community relations. We're going to be eliminating public information officer. We've already eliminated 1 lieutenant and 1 sergeant from that division. And in the future, at the end of the option 1, we will have eliminated the community services section, which is 1 sergeant and 3 police officers. The record section is eliminated 1 records clerk. That's occurred with a retirement that occurred recently. In the training section, the administrative aide has been eliminated. That's also a retirement through attrition. Research and technology, previously eliminated was a computer system police officer position, and 1 analyst planner. Now the analyst planner here is in purple to reflect at the beginning of the budgets, so it'll be this year's budget, we're going to take a consolidated position from elsewhere in the city into our analyst planner position, but at the end of this option, when option 1 is totally implemented, that position is going to have to be eliminated. So we're going to take it in, that person will have a job for a couple more years. The public relations assistant is the same position. We'll transition that position into the police department to assist us with our community relations, but at the end of this option being exercised with all the cutbacks, that position will have to be eliminated. This is operations. Previously this was called the patrol division, so this is where most of your uniform personnel are. Starting at the top where the 5 desk attendants are, as many of you are aware, we, through contractual agreement with the Troy Police Officers Association, reduced some positions of police officers, and we saved $250,000 every year by replacing the desk officer position with part-time desk attendants. Those tend to be retired police officers or retired personnel from the police department that understand the computer systems, our policies and procedures, and they come in and they work the desk. It's part-time, they can work up to 1,000 hours a year. We've also cut back on our desk operations where the police facility, now the doors are open, but there isn't necessarily somebody working when they come in during the hours of typical weekend and hours of darkness. We anticipate starting with shift 1. We're going to be eliminating, we've already eliminated 1 police service aide position, 2 animal control officers. We've already eliminated from shift 2, which is afternoon shift, 1 police service aide. From shift 3, we've eliminated 1 police service aide. And shift 4 here shows a future, again, at the end of option 1, we're going to have to eliminate a whole shift. So what that's going to mean is that we're going to be dropping down 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 14 police officers, 1 animal control officer, and 1 police service aide. The communications section, similar to the lockup section, is a revenue source through our contract with the City of Clawson. We're making more than $100,000 a year in providing that service to the City of Clawson. This is what, at the end of option 1, is what our final organizational chart is anticipated to look like. Now, we're doing our best to make these changes through attrition. So, through attrition, we're just not sure who's going to retire and who isn't going to retire. We can think we've got a pretty good idea, but when it starts getting down to some of these numbers, some of these numbers are going to change. The bottom line number is going to be the same. We're going to have the same number of personnel. But based on where people shift to, based on their training experience, some of these things are going to change. For example, I didn't anticipate that Lynn McDaniel was going to be retiring from the training center. We knew she'd be retiring, just didn't think it would be this soon. She's retired, so we haven't filled that position. We took that work, we transferred it back to the police department so we could still run our operation from the police department took the work that she did at the training center and has been absorbed by the other staff within the police department itself. Just a simple example of that. So this is what we anticipate pretty generally we're going to look like. It's a big change from the first organizational chart. We saw we had a lot more divisions, a lot more people. The purpose of this is to give you an idea of the growth of the Troy Police Department since 1978, when we had 89 sworn personnel and 26 civilian personnel. You can see, if you were to lay this over our calls for service and our population, you can see we increased as the calls for service and population increased. And then when we're getting here into 2010 and beyond, at the end of option 1, you can see where we anticipate we're going to be based upon the funding level that we're going to have. We're going to drop to 93 sworn personnel. So that's police officers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and chief of police, and 49 non-sworn personnel. Of the 49 non-sworn personnel, it's different from where we were back then. This is essentially all the people that work in lockup and communications. If we were to staff that with police officers, our costs would increase by 33%. So there are definitely cost savings for us. It's one of the issues we have that you'll see there's a larger percentage drop in the number of police officers and the percentage drop in the number of non-sworn personnel, because these support staff are what keep the police officers on the road, and we get more efficient use of the police officers, and it makes more sense financially to do that. I started with the Troy Police Department in 1979. This is the front page of the annual report from 1979. In 1979, we had 93 sworn police officers in the city of Troy. What we're looking at here now is at the end of option 1, we're going to be back to 93 sworn police officers in the city of Troy. So what this doesn't reflect, which we try to get a map to show an overview of this, of the differences between the city of Troy in 1979 and today. You can't really do justice on a map for the scale we have here. But you have to picture the city of Troy without the Somerset collection, without Big Beaver being improved, without all the main roadways being improved. I was out with Mr. Zerlike today, Mr. Lamorado. We drove through Waddles and Livernois. That was 2-lane blacktops in both directions, and at night it was a flashing light. So things have changed. Things have changed quite a bit. We're going to be in a position where we're going back to doing that with the same number of sworn personnel. Now, what I didn't get into here is what we're looking at regarding the lost services. I can answer questions on that if we need, but I think pretty much the organizational charts speak for themselves, and that's what Mr. Zerlake wanted me to present. But I can answer any questions regarding the other services that we're looking at.
Questions, Chief? Councilman Kerwin?
Well, your criminal investigative unit has done so much and been so well recognized. How much, everything you say hurts, but is there any way that that can be filled in a different way, or?
We're doing some things with other cities and getting them to supply police officers to work on our, for example, our special investigations unit. And that allowed us to free up officers. The officer that went to the ICE BEST team was freed up from our special investigations unit without actually dropping the number of personnel in there, because we got 2 other officers, one from Bloomfield Township and one from Auburn Hills. So we have 5 police officers and 1 sergeant now. 3 of the police officers are Troy. So we're able to take the other one and move them to another position where we get some revenue supplies. They're supported by the Criminal Information Unit, which basically does the intelligence work and keeps them on the road. So we're going to do our best to keep the surveillance unit out there, but the people that support them, that and also are there to go out where they do raids and go out them and do some other police type stuff, I anticipate are going to be gone. We don't like to say that, but we don't see any way around it. So we're going to do our best to keep things going as best as we can, but there's definitely going to be a detrimental effect to our investigative flow.
It sounds like you've looked at ways of regionally working together. I know there are many other examples of things that you have done on a regional basis. And you continue to do that going forward?
Yes, we'll always look to do what we can to regionalize, work with other police departments. We've got a great partnership with many departments at both local, state, federal, county levels. This week we're doing training with the FBI at our training center, where they're coming in and at no cost, at very little cost, they're teaching officers on negotiation skills for crisis management. We don't have anybody from Troy in that class because all our officers that are on the hostage negotiation team have already been through it. This is like the 7th time they've done it. But we have partnerships with other agencies that we try to capitalize on to keep our costs down. That's just one example. I mean, we're constantly doing that to try to keep our costs down and maximize. This is a people business. So there's a lot we can do, and there's efficiencies we can have, but we can be better at a computer, and we can make sure that the phones are working correctly, and we're able to handle calls in a quick method and put them out through an MDC. But if officers get tied up, which you'll see when we're down to this number, if officers are getting tied up on retail frauds at Somerset, the Somerset Collection, or the Oakland Mall, or any of our other retail establishments, and we've got a accident on I-75, we can try to call, see if the state police are available. They're going through funding issues too. Or we go up there and handle it ourselves, and we do the best we can. We won't have the resources available. If something else happens at the same time, a request for ambulance, we'll do our best. We'll scramble all people to do it, but it's going to have an effect. It's going to have a negative, detrimental effect on our ability to provide the high level of service that the citizens of Detroit use. We're going to do the best we can, but it's going to have an effect.
What kind of a dollar figure are we looking at, the difference in staffing of what we have now to when we're down to 93? What's the comparison number?
I'll defer to the experts.
I know that's a hard question.
100,000 position.
It,
On average, 100,000.
pardon?
On average, 100 for sworn.
Yes.
Well over 100,000 per position. So how many are at? You're at 100.
We're 131 now, so if you drop 47.5 people, essentially, just to use round numbers, you take 100,000 per person, we're up to about $5 million.
Okay. And now I noticed that one of the divisions being cut is the juvenile unit, and the effect, did you discuss for the schools yet, the effect that's going to have, because we've had officers at the schools for many years as a prevention kind of thing for
We haven't
started to have those discussions?
We haven't started having any of these discussions yet until I have a good firm grasp on what's going to happen here and what's going on. It dawned on me tonight as I'm sitting next to Cindy Stewart that I didn't take the time to talk to her today to tell her at the end of this her position's eliminated half-time in the police department. So, I mean, this has been very difficult to do. We haven't had the opportunity to do that. So.
And with the other law enforcement organizations, when the criminal intelligence unit was gone, because we work with those other units.
Yes,
and
we're
they
the
rely
host.
on us just like we rely on them.
Yes, and we've got a very good unit. Every law enforcement agency likes to think they're the best, so we think we're the best. We host a lot of those intelligence gathering events and the exchanges, so we will have a negative effect in that. We're the host of some task force that we're members of. It's because and it isn't because of the people that are currently here. This has been the Troy tradition. This is what we always did. The people that the chiefs that came before me, the captains, everybody that was before us started this, and this is the direction we went. So we continued this good direction. But when you look at what we do with the number of people we have, we're a very efficient organization. So when you start taking police officers that we have and eliminating those positions, it is going to have a negative impact.
And is there any kind of adjustment that you could do in the department that would save money in one area so it could be put into another area so we don't have to be eliminating that many people? Or do the numbers just not work out?
Well, I believe it's 87% of my budget is personnel related.
Right.
So we're people. We're people business. It takes people to go out and work with people. That's what we do. So to make up to make up $5 million a year, we're going to do our best. We're going to go out. We're going to scramble for all the forfeiture opportunities we can. We're going to do what we can to look at efficiencies. We're always going to do that. I don't want to be overly pessimistic. We're going to do the best we can, but I have to be realistic too. I can't take some people that are at the lower end of the seniority list and give them the false hope they shouldn't take a job somewhere else. They should stick around with us because we're going to do what we can for them. I can't do that. That'd be wrong. So we're going to do the best we can.
I think, and again, as Mr. Zerlike stated back at the beginning, we have to be realistic about our situation, the monies, and what's going to happen to all departments. I thought I saw Councilman Slater signal.
Gary, this is extremely depressing for me. I can imagine what you're going through. I brought up at the last meeting that I thought with the organization losing 47 in 1 year may be worse than 20 and 20 or 20 and 25. What's your feeling on that? Do you agree with that, or would you rather delay this as long as you possibly can?
I'm sorry. I don't have the full option one out here. The way option one is laid out is it is essentially, as you just stated, it's 29 1 year, 19 the other. So there's they are staggered over 2 years. My feeling is through some attrition, we had next year's numbers met based on what the original option one was, which was 4. We'll be fine with that through attrition. We'll meet that number. It's if we go into keeping option one the way it was a few months ago, then I'll have more attrition there, just with people leaving, and hope I'll be able to get closer to that number. But I don't think I'll have. I believe it's. I don't have it in front of me. It's either 19 or 29 the second year. We'll get close to it, but we will have to do some layoffs, I would anticipate.
I think we're ultimately going to make a decision here soon what to do with the $3.8 million. And I know a lot of us are struggling how much money should go to roads. What we're seeing here is a delay, I think, until 12/13, and a lot of that money going towards the police department or public safety. So, my struggle is, do I support delaying those layoffs as long as we can, in hopes that maybe through attrition and hopes through other means that we don't have to lay off some young police officer who is the future of Troy. Can we look for those? I know we can't guarantee things. Are we done with incentives? Is that still an option to get some retirees and keep the young? I think it's just very important to your organization to keep the young officers. They're the future of Troy. It wouldn't be good for the organization to have to lay off the young officers, in my opinion. I left the police department because of an incentive. Maybe we can continue and try that again to save the young officer, because I think they are so important to Troy in the future. They're the ones that actually have new ideas. They're the ones that have gone through education recently. So I'm struggling, what to do with at least my vote in a 3.8. And I would just like to hear maybe what, is that going to be that important to defray it, or should we just accept reality and we're going to lose 47 and just say, okay, well, let's do 20 and 25 and be done with it. Personally, I'd like to see, maybe some incentives to try and keep the young officers. I don't want to lay off one police officer, one young officer if we don't have to.
You mentioned there are costs. We've got significant training costs with police officers, and when we hire them on, there's the cost of the background investigation. We probably look at 3 to 5 backgrounds for every one person we hire, because we're very selective in who we hire. There's cost with that. There's cost with the training. There's cost with the field training officer time. eventually if we hit a spot where we, worst case scenario, we stay at this number of 93, if we're taking and we lay off the lower officers first blush, and then later on the senior officers retire anyways, and we got to start that process again of expending money on sending people through the police academy or hiring and training them. So we'll be incurring additional costs. I haven't analyzed that. I wasn't prepared to discuss that, so I didn't analyze it out, but I would agree with your points.
Yeah, I'm struggling what to do with this money, with my vote.
You know, I want to go to something again that I mentioned the other night in our meeting, and that is on the citywide action plan, the priority for funding, the outputs. And through the years, when we've done surveys from the community, and they ranked what they thought was most important, and when council sat down and ranked what was most important, they continued to put continual police and fire functions as number one. Yes, roads are important, and putting money into roads is important. But I think that in view of what the community feels that a city should provide for citizens that they can't provide for themselves, they always look at safety first. Now, I have grave concerns about us accelerating option one more than what was anticipated when we sat down and we talked about option one, and the amount of money that is available from undesignated, unreserved funds. And I'd like to make a strong case again for the use of that money toward police. And looking at the numbers of what we see, I know that there are places where we talked about road money for our own local roads, but I don't want to see that done at the expense of the high quality that we have in our police department here in the city. Mr. Zerline?
We can make no guarantees here. The reason that we took funding, the $3.8 million from the quality of life capital reserves, was essentially to try to maintain the integrity of option one, which didn't have these layoffs occur until the year 3 of the budget, essentially.
Right.
And while we can't make a guarantee, when you're talking about something this drastic, and this option decimates the quality of life departments. If you want to keep the library, this is going to be worse. Mm-hmm. And while we can make no guarantees, I believe that if every city, especially in Oakland County, were to do a 3-year budget, right, many of them, if not contiguous, at least adjacent to us, would not be here 3 years from now. We're going to be here 3 years from now. If we can still have more of a problem-solving department instead of an emergency response only department, which is where essentially we're heading. You can't go to these levels with 25,000 more people and be a great police department. It's not going to happen. If it would give us an opportunity to meet with these other departments, and Gary's doing that right now, to try to be the host community for some consolidation effort, the extra time may help us. I can't guarantee it, but that's something you may want to think about when you make your decision.
Well, especially like we're doing the dispatch with Clausen now, there
Yes.
would be other communities that, if they felt their dispatch was equal to what they were getting now, but do it through us, that would be something that we could do together. There's some other combined efforts that I'm sure as they look down the road. When you've met with the other city managers, I know you have regular meetings with them, are they talking about doing those kinds of things too, or not? Or they're basically looking at this 1-year budget and they're not ready for 3-year?
I think most of the cities are going to adopt a 1-year budget.
Do you think we should host?
I think you heard.
Yes?
That's the easiest thing to do.
I think you may have heard that the city of Farmington is seeking a $1.3 0.38 mil increase.
Right.
And that's the first I heard of it, was a couple days ago. Whatever. Now, cities, most cities, I'm going to say 95% of the cities probably, waiting for their budget process to happen. Sterling Heights, a little bit ahead, even though they're still only looking at 1 year, basically, but they were a little ahead of the game when they were looking at, they knew they were having problems. But most cities, and you haven't even heard any of them yet, when now in May and June, when we get into their budget, you're going to hear every single city is going to be, they're seeking a millage increase, laying off major employees, and it now all of a sudden it just came about, well, no, it's been going on, and we've been tackling since last fall, and even before then, way before then, but last fall, more serious and looking at a multi-year budget, and most of them are still just looking at a 1 year. And I know the city of Southfield is using $10 million in fund balance to balance the budget. Well, how long are they going to be able to do that? So, but I mean, you're just hearing this now. Whatever Farmington, all the clear blue. Oh, we need 1.3 mils. Well, you just found out about that now. That you need 1.3 mils to survive. No. So that's what's getting out there now. Finally, in the public, you're going to hear it from every city that now is going to budget processes. Every city is in trouble. Every single city.
I think it would be important for us to maybe host a meeting with some of the other cities and talk about the things that we could do together, especially starting, at the place level, and initiate that. I don't know what kind of a response you'll get, but I think it would be worthwhile.
It would be great to get past.
After they get past their budget.
It would be great to get past the anger, denial, and magical thinking as well.
Yes, it would be.
You can hear.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment or ask Chief Mann a question at this point?
Thank you.
Anybody? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, I know, there's more pages.
Three-year budget, some of the characteristics and guidelines of a multi-year budget. Once again, the budget process is no longer an annual event. Multiple-year budgets evolves year-round. You have to make reasonable assumptions, make modifications as more data is available. It's now considered a rolling budget. It's no longer a once-a-year or twice-a-year budget amendment. And make timely and frequent budget amendments. So this is a major change from what we've been used to here in most cities, and still some aren't even going to this, but it's a major change looking at a 3-year budget, and the changes, a lot of people put a lot of work into the budget document. We know there's going to be changes. Any little change anywhere could affect multiple, in this budget here of 300 and some odd pages, it could affect, one change could affect 80 pages of the budget, just in numbers that have to flow all the way through and in various schedules and various reports. But it's going to be changing, and so people have to get out of that mindset. This is my budget for the year, and that's it. Here's what we have to. Well, no, things are going to be changing. If something comes up this year that will have an effect on not only this year but second and third year of the budget, we'll be making amendments to all 3 of those years, the current year plus going out too, whether it's positive or negative, and those things will come through. Now, I could say with great certainty that 10-11 budget is, it's right on. It's like just as we were sure with our tax projections, taxable value adjustments, for 1 year, 2 years, you're very accurate in those numbers and pretty close, very close. Going out 3 years, 2 and 3 years, there's going to be some changes that are going to happen. So I'm just letting you know right now, this is a budget document. It's our first effort at a 3-year budget document, but there will be changes, and they'll come to you as amendments to the budget, positive or negative, throughout the year. As we look at privatization of other departments, those are major changes. and those will have to be reflected in the budget. So, taking a look at the three-year budget, what we did not do a total complete, every fund three-year budget. We thought it was important to focus on all the property tax-related funds at this point. So we looked at the general fund, the refuse fund, the debt service fund, and the capital fund, which makes up the majority of our budget. But those are the ones we want to look at. Those are where the property tax dollars and the concerns are, the declining taxable value and so forth. So we look at it from, this is our current, our 10, 11, 11, 12, 12, 13. General fund for 10, 11 went down 6.9%. For 11, 12, it's decreasing 9.7%. And 12, 13, an additional 3.9%. The refuse fund was a 0.8% increase for 10, 11, 2.9% for 11, 12, and a 2.9% for 12, 13. The debt service fund, 2.9% increase for 10, 11, 2% decrease for 11, 12, and a 0.6% increase for 12, 13. The capital projects fund, there was a 1.4 or 2.9% increase for, 1.4% decrease for 10, 11, a 57.5% decrease for 11, 12. Now, a lot of that is the transit center is a major portion of that money that's coming out of there. In 12, 13, it's another 2.5% reduction. Overall, look at 11, 12, or for just these funds, 11, 12 budget is down $21.7 million over the 10, 11 budget, an additional $2.2 million in 2012, 13 over 2011, 12. That's just, I know a lot of numbers there, but that's just kind of what we're looking at. These are the major funds that our 3 years are based on. Once again, we utilize option one as a schematic and as a guideline in preparation and preparing the 2011, 12, and 12, 13 budgets. Looking at the taxable value projections going out to 2028. Now, these are estimates, once again, 2 years, fairly certain. Beyond that, it gets a little sketchy, but if anything, these may be a little optimistic going out further. But it's based on a market recovery beginning after 2014, which hopefully that's the case. And it includes a 3% cap on taxable value increase from 2015 forward, based on because we're going to figure basically everything's going to be at the assessed value and taxable value are going to be the same. So it's going to be basically the CPI index increases, and it is going to go up at some point in time. So we're going to reckon it a negative like we did this for this current year we're going into. So as that goes up, there will be some increase in value, but we're looking at that 2015 forward. So in 2014, our taxable value is projected to go from $4.8 billion in 2010 to $3.7 billion in 2014. And based on this chart here, with a 3% increase after 2015 going out, we will not until 2027, 28, it'll be before we get back to our taxable value of 2008. So we're in for a long haul here, and it's not going to get. It's going to take a number of years before you can see any improvement. And once again, this chart's based on a 3% increase, which, depending on the CPI and so forth, may be a little optimistic. Looking at our 3-year summary of millage requirements, all millage rates, with the exception of the refuse millage, will remain the same in a 3-year budget. We've talked several times on the refuse, and the rate should be, the rate charged there should be enough to cover the expenses of that operation. The current year we have a 12.12 mil increase in the refuse fund for 10-11. The millage rate, 11-12, we're looking at a 0.11 mil increase. 2012-13, a 0.08 mil increase. Now, once again, we're saying the refuse millage rate is, those are estimates out in the future. each year, and we get our actual SACRA rates and so forth, and our actual contractor service rates. We'll look at that. We'll take a look at our actual taxable value, what happened to that, and the rates may go up a little bit or down, depending on where we are. And right now, it's our estimate, and that's with the 2.9% increase in those cost of services. One of the major factors they have is the fuel escalation in that contract, and fuel prices, as you notice, are starting to go up again, and that will cause our rates to increase. But these will be reviewed, and next year when we have the numbers, we'll see if it needs to be adjusted or not, and go on forward. This is a look at the average residential taxable value in the city, and you know that 2010-11 for that budget, it went from 120, a little over 120,000 to about 103,000 average residential, with an average residential property tax of $963. 2011-12, it's estimated that our average residential will go down to $92,240, or they'll pay $877 in city taxes. In 2012-13, it's based on average residential going down to $86,710 and paying $832 for all the city services. These rates do include the refuse millage increase for those years. So even with those increases, you can see what the average residential homeowner is going to be paying. This will result in the average residential tax will have a decrease of $86 in 2011-12 and $45 in 12-13. This is on top of the $151 reduction for years 2010-11.
Could I ask a question here? We've talked about it before, but I'm still unclear what we're allowed and not allowed to do. When the tax bill goes out, I asked about this before because we always put that dollar and it shows 27 cents goes, you know, to the city and where the others go. Is there anything that we can do on that bill in another color, maybe, instead of just black and white, in a color to show the reduction in the city amount so that people will really take a look at it?
Well, we did show for the first time in the tax change notices that went out, we did show what the effect is, what your current taxes are, and what the change would be, and if it's the decrease and so forth. But an actual tax bill itself?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
On the actual bill, are there restrictions about what we're allowed to do and not do on that? Could we find out?
Not really. I mean, it's pretty filled up as it is, but
right.
And colors and all that are more cost and so forth, if you want to get into that, but I don't know what else you'd like to show. What if you wanted, we could look at it, but there isn't a lot of room on it, but we could take a look at it.
Well, I just think that it's important to be emphasizing it to people, because we still get people that will talk about, they keep talking about their total tax bill amount.
Yeah.
And of course, yes, they're paying their total tax bill, they write the check to the city of Troy, but we don't, that isn't our money to pay for all these kinds of things. And I think that a way to educate the public is always good, I think.
We try to, on all the
we've said it and
counters
said it, maybe visually they need to see it.
I think it's in a lot of our publications. In Troy Today, I know a lot. It's in our PAFR, it's in our budget, it's on a lot of the counters, the public counters. We have the actual tax bill there, which shows it. But
I know
I'm just afraid of putting a lot of numbers on there because people sometimes pick up the wrong number, pay the wrong amount, or things like that too. So I mean, you have to watch it. We could take a look at it, but it is pretty. We're putting a dollar sign on it, and that was a major.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
major change. So there isn't a lot of room.
But we assume when we put those things out in other places that people are reading them, but we don't know if they are.
We could just.
And they actually look at their they actually get the tax bill, and of course they have to pay it. But I'm just bringing it up because here we are talking about this reduction, and I think maybe it's important to emphasize that somewhat.
And Mayor.
Councilman Kerwin?
And I think that we learned that through these past few months. That people in speaking, well, I wrote a check for $4,000 and so on and so forth. Well, 27% of it was here. And I think if that could be a consideration, I think that's really important. But this, everything that you're showing, shows that less means less. And I think that that's what we went out when we talked about option one. Option one will mean less is less, and this is what less looks like. And I think you can see it everywhere we go. And particularly when we hear from the chief on what this means. I know that we have many library supporters, and we've supported the library very well with $4 million. But when you're looking at how many sworn officers will be gone for about $5 million, it's so significant.
It's that significant, and as we go through this, it's as significant in all the other departments where there is skeletal crews left anywhere in the city. So public safety is a top priority, but you look throughout as we go through this, it's going to be very difficult to operate. And you can see it as we go through this, and that's what's going to happen.
That's option one. Thank you.
So anyways, that did show basically, which is here. Once again, this shows everything staying level for the next 3 years, with the exception of the refuse millage rate, which is a slight increase each of those years. This is a chart just showing that the average city taxes paid for the average residential taxable value, and this number is really, when you look at it, the average residential taxpayer is paying $157 in 2010-11 for capital improvements, include all road improvements, all the capital things we talked about. They're paying $157, the average residential. Next year it's going down to $141 and $133. So you have that to contend with when you want road improvements. You have the state, our Act 51 money, which is decreasing every single year, and you can't do the same amount of work. And you'll see in capital, it's basically down to some roads and some drains, and that's it in the future. Looking at the general fund, unreserved, undesignated fund balance as a percentage of the budget. We are going to maintain and are estimated to maintain the 15% of general fund expenditures in unreserved, undesignated over these next 3 years. And by doing that, we will be able to use $2.4 million in the 10-11 budget of fund balance, $1.8 million in the 2011-12 budget, and $500,000 in the 12-13 budget, and still maintain our 15% level. Now, once again, those would be year-end results, mean whether or not your fund balance goes up or down. So if we can come in expenditures under the revenues, and we could add to our fund balance. But this does have a little bit of that estimated in there because we've had a history of doing that. The overall general fund balance, which is projected to decrease in dollar amount from 2011-12 through 2012-13, once again due to the utilization of fund balance in there. And also we are using in 12-13 budget, we have a reserved fund for volunteer firefighters incentive plan of $1 million in our budget. We are using in 12-13, we're using $250,000 of that reserve in order to balance out that budget. How Troy allocates its money in a 3-year. You can see that from police all the way down that there are changes, and some of the major ones, Parks and Recreation, took some major hits because of the community center and nature center not being reflected in those budgets. The library and museum took major hits, are barely existent there with reduction of those services. Three-year personnel summary. top of the current year's 55 or 61, however you want to look at it, depending what happens with building inspection. We're looking at an additional 54 employees or 40 employees for the 11-12 full-time employee reduction in these various areas. We do have listed here the building and golf course, which is under review. But there are 5 full-time positions currently at the golf courses. So just a recap of several pages of all the positions. These follow very closely option 1. Top of that, part-time, 214 part-time positions reduced from the budget. All these various departments. Basically almost a 50% reduction in the part-time staff from 10-11 to 11-12. 236 part-time positions left in the budget. (2012-13) there's a reduction all in the police department of 17 positions, 13 uniform positions. And that one, all the other departments have been scaled back to the bare bone at that point. Full-time employees per 1,000. For 10-11, we're at 4.9 employees per 1,000. 2011-12 will be at 4.2. 2012-13, 3.9. Once again, the benchmark is 5.7 nationwide. New basic view will be down to 317 full-time positions. 2012-13, and half of those will be police.
And this probably also a late 1970s number for the rest of the employees, isn't it?
Probably.
About 30 years back in time.
But I wanted to change this expenditure highlights. Well, there's some not. I mean, highlights might not be a good word here. I'll put or significant events for 2011-12. I'll see it's a highlight by closing the library and so forth. But it does the 11-12 budget. It's closing the library, community center, museum, and nature center. Utilizing $1.5 million from the capital fund to delay public safety layoffs. A decrease of $5.6 million or 9.7% from the 2010-11 budget. Does include the second year of a 5-year estimated defined benefit pension adjustment contribution. It does, and this is a major one, it does return the responsibility of winter maintenance on county roads to the Road Commission of Oakland County. And due to the reduction in public works employees of 10 equipment operators, they no longer, what we get subsidized by them doesn't cover the cost, and depending on the severity of the winter, but that means all your Oakland County roads, which again are what, Big Beaver, Maple, Long Lake, Quinder, John R. All those will be now, and 11-12 will be maintained, winter maintenance and plowed by the county. There is also a few other adjustments. There's no increase in hospitalization cost for 11-12 due to the healthcare concessions we're seeking from employees. So that all comes about We have no healthcare increase built in there. There's no increase in the supplies category for all departments. There's no increase in other service and charges category for all departments, with the exception of some utility bill increases for the rates that are passed along. There are no wage increases for all employee groups, with the exception of the TPOA, which has a 1.5% increase in their contract. And the classified and exempt right now is the only group that will, has a continuation of the 5% wage concession. 11-12 budget. The other ones were good through 10-11, but 11-12, as contracts come up, those will be negotiated. General fund, looking at the main categories, personal services are down $4.1 million from 10-11, or 10.1%. Supplies are down $500,000, 20.3%. Other service and charges down $966,000, or 6.7%. Once again, about $5.6 million reduction, or 9.7%. Personal services are a result of our full-time and part-time layoffs or through attrition, reduction in personnel. The closing of the library, community center, museum, nature center are the major impacts there, and supplies and other service and charges. We do have minimal operating holding cost for those facilities in the budget. For the museum, nature center, community center, library. Supplies, a little breakdown of that is $508,000, roughly 20.3%, 11-12, some of the major reductions. Once again, a lot of these are related to the closing of the facilities, and also no longer plowing the county roads and salt usage and so forth. That's in the repairs and maintenance supply line item. Other service charges, $966,000 reduction for 11-12. Computer services are down $460,000. Once again, those less computers out there, and also the library computer system and so forth. Contractual services is the only area that went up. That's basically because we do have in Parks and Rec and some public works areas with the reduction in those two areas. We do have some money in there built in for privatization to do some of those functions that were done by current city staff. Professional service and rentals, those are vehicle rentals, and the building maintenance costs and so forth are all down because of the closing of those facilities. In 2012-13, once again highlights, I don't like to do that, but it's a decrease of $2.1 million, or 4% from the 11-12 budget. We're transferring $2.2 million from the capital fund to reduce layoffs in the public safety area. There's still a reduction of 17 full-time positions. In 12-13, we have the pension fund, the pension contribution increased. We're offsetting by concessions and investment performance over these next 2 years. Hopefully offset that. We'll review that when we get our actuarial here in July or so to see if that is going to work out or not. And then the following year, we'll have another actuarial report done to see if that works out. But right now, we're including no pension increases in the employer's cost in 12-13. There's no, once again, no increase in supplies category for any department. No increase in other service and charges, once again with the exception of utilities, and a small increase in some contractual service cost. No wage increases for all employee groups, and with the exception of TPOA, who was the last year of their contract, which has a 1.5% increase in there. And again, at this point, classified and exempt group be a continuation of the 5% wage concession, the only group at this point that's built into it. The expenditures by object, personal services down $2.3 million, or 6.3%. Supplies have stayed exactly the same. Other services and charges went up about $252,000, or 1.9%. That's some utilities and some other contractual services. fund expenditures by object over those 3 years. 2010-11, 70.8% was for personal services. 2011-12, it's 70.5%, and drops to 68.9% in 12-13. Supplies have remained approximately the same, and other service and charges have increased due to privatization efforts. Looking at 3-year refuse and recycling fund. Once again, based on the millage rates that we had 0.87 mils in 2010-11, 0.98, 11-12, and 1.06 in 12-13. Those are necessary basically because of the declining taxable value and also increase in contractual services. Once again, these will be reviewed annually for any adjustments that may be necessary in the contractual line item, and also in the millage rate that's being charged. That service fund maintains the 0.50 mils over the 3 years. After that point, there's going to be a lot of pressure on that millage rate, which we talked about last week, for an increase when you look into year 13, 14, and beyond. And as long as the taxable value decline continues, which we project it will be, no matter how much it declines. But in year 2013, 14, there will be a need for an adjustment in that rate. Capital Projects Fund, once again, maintains the same millage rate of 1.53 mils over these 3 years. You can see what happens to the tax revenue there because of declining tax base each of those years, going from 7.2 to 6.3 million 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. On the expense side, one thing I will point out is we do have the fire vehicle replacement in there for $500,000 for the next year's budget and 2011-12. It is not in the 12-13. There are no funds available for that. Also, practically all the capital funding for all departments, with the exception of Public Works, has been eliminated. And you can see from all the dashed lines there. Some departments are no longer here, but even ones that are here, there's no money available other than to go towards roads. And that reflects in 2012, 11-12, and 12-13, the transfer of funds over to the general fund. So that. Any questions on that, on the clear budget?
Okay. Council members, Councilman Beltrame, do you say that? Yes, please. Personal services are personnel costs.
Yes.
We are projecting losing another 54 people next year and 246 part-time.
14,
okay. And our personal services cost is only going down 10%. So we're losing 30% of our people, but it's only going down 10%.
Yeah, if you look at the dollar amount, it's over 5.some million, I think it was.
Yeah, it's 4.125947. Yeah. So
That's quite over. That's with, like I said, with the healthcare.
Yeah.
No increase in the healthcare piece of it.
Which obviously is huge. Thanks.
Any other questions on that part? Okay, now we're done.
Okay.
The hard part.
The
last question.
Question, how do you wish to allocate the 3.8, knowing that the budget document, what's in the budget document for it, but it's up to you. And I won't get back up here again, but if you do have any, if you found any typos or minor corrections or whatever, you could let Mary know in our office. We do like to provide the finest document we can, and appreciate those. We could look over several eyes could look it over, and next year I'll look over the budget and say, well, this number or this amount or whatever it is wasn't just or whatever. So, but anyways, only in the write-ups, not in the actual numbers. The actual numbers are right on. But if you have any of those, if you just get them to Mary, appreciate it. And let's talk about the 3.8.
Well, I think I already expressed mine, that I wish to allocate the $3.8 million for delaying public safety layoffs. I think it's important to keep the strength of public safety for as long as possible. Councilman Beltrame? I'm looking for signals here.
Well, I was just, thank you, I was just contemplating Dane's question to the chief. We don't have lots of money to offer incentives, and I know some of you disagree with incentives philosophically, but I do agree with Dane that, you know, if we can offer incentives to our experienced officers so that we can keep the younger ones, so that we don't have to have a larger retraining cost later to replace command officers. If we can work this through the system, I think we're better off. So would this, part of this 3.8, would that be an appropriate use for some of them? I guess that's a philosophical question to hang up.
I think that would be a good thing that the chief and the manager should talk about. Yes, Mr. Zerle?
Just a clarification for Mrs. Beltrame. Would those incentives be only allocated for the police department personnel, or would they be extended throughout the whole city, because there's layoffs throughout the whole city?
Well, that's a great question. And could I just?
Yes, Councilman Slater?
I was going to ask the same question that Robin did. We're allocating this money towards public safety, so we're talking about the money that we're allocating towards public safety. So, to me, I look at it as part of the 3.8 that's going towards public safety. That does include DPW, I believe, right? And the police department and the fire department.
I think the 3.8 is strictly the police department. Strictly? Right? Yeah.
At this point. Also,
go ahead.
Then I think that's where we're talking about then with the 3.8.
There are ways to handle the incentive, if that's the route that council wants to go, and not utilizing the 3.8 for that. Those positions are budgeted in the budget, and you could just, whatever the incentive may be, that position just wouldn't be filled, or it would be vacant. So there would be a saving at some point during the year. So that savings there could be helped offset the cost of that incentive versus using the $3.8 million. So,
I like that thinking.
Okay.
I have a staff meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'm going to be asked that.
About how to explore that?
Well, I'm going to be asked point blank that if there's to be incentives for one core of our employees, will that be extended toward another core of the employees? I know I'm going to be asked that. I don't want to misrepresent my bosses.
Well, but then you'd have to work out how you're going to do that.
Understood.
Yeah.
I think we owe it to all of our employees, personally.
You could try to work it out.
Yeah, to try to work that out for all the employees.
Councilman Thorne, did you want to go next? I'm looking for.
But I know.
I appreciated the phrasing from Councilmember Beltrame, because I do have a problem paying people to leave. I always have had a problem. I don't believe in it fundamentally. I certainly agree that we know how union contracts work. So last hired, first fired, and those tend to be the youngest. So I understand that. However, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with taking 3.8, and now we'll pay more to go, and maybe at the end of this time, we're back there again. So I have concerns about that. Fundamentally, I'm one. As far as the 3.8, I still, again, am very concerned about roads. I truly am. We can see, after reading the narrative, Tri-County's not going to be there for us. The county itself's not going to be there for us. Everything we know about getting down below that fare, it is so expensive to ever bring it back. We talk about opening up a library again. What would the expense be? Having a road go to core is insurmountable. It's more than a police officer, 2 police officers. It is insurmountable. We simply can't get there. We can't pull ourselves out of that. So I think that a portion of the $3.8 million is going to have to go into roads. I think that that's imperative.
Who wants to go next?
I'll
Councilor Beltrame?
I'll piggy on Mary's thoughts because I tend to agree. And it's a safety issue as well. I mean, it does not matter how many squads you've got on the road if they're going to wreck themselves because our roads are in such bad shape trying to get somewhere in a hurry. So, like Mary, I would say some. And I would like to see management look into structuring some incentives to downsize our staff, to maintain what we can in a viable core in a proactive manner.
Okay. Wait, Councilman Slater, want to go next? I haven't called on later.
Yeah, I piggyback. But what is some? I mean, or can we throw enough money to make a difference? Is the question. If we're just going to throw money to throw money and it's really not going to make a difference, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I guess I would have to hear that it's going to make a difference before I would totally support that.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
I was thinking in terms of substantial amount. So that was before any of this incentive conversation came up and how broad that incentive would come. But please remember, even at the end of the day, with a small group, the roads will matter, especially in the event that we're not plowing as we would. The surface of the roads will matter.
But remember, we're talking about money toward local roads. The county roads could fall apart completely if the county doesn't have money, so we won't be able to do anything about that. So, Mr. Zerle?
Thank you. May I ask either Steve Van Dett or Bill Hootery to explain what $3.8 million would do for local and
But
rural
we weren't
roads?
talking about all of it. They weren't talking about all of it. I'm talking about
portion of it.
zero. And then I see 2 hands now.
We
Before
were
you
kind
go
of
there.
discussing it back there, arguing amongst ourselves.
Okay.
If you recall the graphs that John and Shelley and Steve talked about, in the industrial, the local, the majors, in no category are we even in the poor at any funding level, let alone industrial roads. And what if you look at them all kind of as a group, industrials and majors primarily. Industrials at the lower levels trends down. At the level that we're at now, we're actually in the good, trending up. Majors was essentially trending up based on we're looking at putting more money into major roads in the future, decreasing the funding level over the 6 years under industrial roads to kind of go along with the somewhat better condition overall rating. Majors is trending up. We're going to be doing some more overlays on Wallace Road, on Square Lake Road. Those types of things that really are a big bang for the buck. I think Dane's point about, I guess to me, it's more a drop in the bucket. I mean, when we did the memo, we were talking $70 million. in the first year to put a dent in it. And we're talking 3.8. Really, it's a negligible amount. It's a huge dollar amount, but negligible part of the road system.
Okay, thank you. I saw, as he started, I saw 2 hands fly up, so I should call on them really. Councilman McGinnis and then we can do that later. Right.
I guess I just wanted some clarification because we looked at a graph today that pointed out specifically the difference between the years and where it would drop.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2013
Yeah, and
that we saw a dramatic drop. So I think
if you go back to that chart, though, look at the 3 lines. The dramatic drop occurs in all 3 lines.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you throw 3.8, we're currently at the middle line, $3 million.
Right.
You throw 3.8, that pushes you up to 5. You're a little more fair. You don't go to good, you don't go to poor. So the 3.8, has it done anything? It's fixed some more miles of road, and if you live on that road, yeah, you're going to stay. That's good. Has it changed the overall network? No.
And I don't think anybody was talking about all 3.8 anyway.
No, but I'm
Some.
saying if you threw the entire 3.8 million, does it really have an overall effect on the system?
It doesn't.
Oh, realistically, no.
It's a different conversation than we had before.
Yeah. Right.
Because we were here, sat in this room
I totally
1
agree.
week ago and heard from someone else that it did in fact make a significant
It
difference.
makes a difference overall to your overall network. It's not going to make a significant difference because of the dollar amount. I mean, originally the memo that was done 2 sessions ago, we looked at $70 million to bring the entire system up to good. We looked at $30 million to bring the entire system up to fair. That's having every road, 265 miles of local roads, at that condition at that time. To maintain it, another $5 million a year after that. What you're looking at here is $3.8 million. What's the best use? Do you throw it at roads? It's going to improve, and we could come up with a number of how many more miles we think it would improve. But if you're looking at your overall system and the impact of that $3.8 million on the system, my concern is that you're going to say, well, let's put some money into roads. You're not going to see the benefit you're looking for.
Councilman Fleming, did you have a comment or question?
Thank you so much, because you gave the answer I was thinking. It's really a drop in the bucket, the overall problem we've got with roads. So with that being said, I'd be in favor of keeping the whole 3.8 million and use it with personnel. As far as the incentive plan, I much prefer John's approach to taking any of that 3.8 million. I want that 3.8 million to preserve jobs and go to maintaining jobs and delay that. But as far as incentives, he's exactly right. If you're going to incentivize a person, reducing the payroll cost of that head count, it's self-funding. So that makes a lot of sense. So I like that. And I'm not just talking one department. I'm talking what's fair for one is fair for all. In my opinion, you do that across the board with all city employees, not just one. Another comment, if I could, go ahead if you want to
Go
call.
ahead, and then I'm going to go back to, I saw Councilman.
Okay.
McGinnis.
Well, I've got the floor too. There's some things that are not reflected in the budget because we don't know what to put into the budget right now. As Mr. Lamorato said, this is a rolling budget.
Right.
We know we're going to learn things going down the road, what we're doing with head counts and so forth. As we go through contract negotiations, even though we budget wage freezes, we budget caps on insurance and medical benefits and so forth, there might be actually some reductions that you can negotiate going down the road. That's not reflected. And rightfully so, because you don't know. So it could be a little better than what we're looking at.
If I may, Your Honor,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming is correct. We open up every new contract with an indication that we are going to engage in concessionary bargaining. We just couldn't put a number down because we can't assure what it is. But any resultant savings that we have will certainly be reflected to delay layoffs in various areas.
Councilman McGinnis?
I probably have a lot of things to respond on, but
Go ahead.
well, I just think in terms of our discussions with the roads and public safety, the conversation that we were just having kind of goes in the face of, I think, what all of us were trying to balance in terms of the roads and public safety, because everything that we've known thus far is that prevention and maintenance are the key to the road system, that it's a much easier solution for you to try to prevent the wear and tear or the total failure piece by piece than having to come in and fix the problem.
And if I can interrupt.
Well, and I know it's a different set of.
Well, but if I can interrupt, the 3-year budget, as the 6-year budget, doesn't go to zero. Local roads is 3.15 million over the 6-year period. Major roads is 7 million this year. It's ranges about 4 million a year over the 6-year period. We're dumping 2 million into industrials, and that flops. We're going to put $1 million into overlays on major roads, and we're going to put $500,000 into industrials and $1 million into slab. So we've still got essentially the same investment that we see now, if not more, because current year we're at about $7 million. A big chunk of that is the Rochester project, the Waddles project, because we've got the remainder of the right-of-way phase, and we've got some construction action to those. Next year we're dropping almost $3 million, but we're not reducing the maintenance level. The maintenance level is essentially staying the same from this year to next year. So we're spending about $4 million, if I remember correctly. Major road maintenance on industrial slabs, those types of things. Local roads, we're doing the same type of thing. We're about $3 million. So the maintenance level is not going to zero, and I think that could be the difference.
Do you have another question?
Well,
Go ahead. Okay.
I mean, so what I'm hearing is that for as bad of a situation as we're in, you plan for it and that it's somewhat under control in terms of that. And that makes a huge difference, I think, in terms of the discussions that we've all been struggling
And
with.
what we've looked at, and what John had asked us to do, is what does it take to maintain the system overall in a fair condition? Because as was stated in the memo, we can't get to, fiscally, we can't get to a good level with our network overall and maintain it. Just $70 million in the first year, $5 million a year from there. We can't do that. We program $3 million a year for locals. That'll keep us in the fair category. Yeah, in year 2013, we're showing a drop, but even if we were at a higher level, at say $5 million, we're going to drop, we're not going to drop as far in the fair. We're still in the fair. And so that's, I guess, a philosophical question as to where you want to be in fair.
You got another one? Go ahead.
No other questions. I think probably just in terms of the 3.8, I mean, I think that if that's the situation with the roads, then obviously we saw tonight a lot of detail, and although we can't be detailed with 100% accuracy in terms of the restructuring and the reorganization of the police department, which I think is something that people needed, and they needed that information, and we see where it's going. And it's a place we don't want to go, but we see where it's going. And I think if we have the 3.8, the roads are under control, that's where it needs to go. I mean, that's my
to the police.
That's what I think. But I also think in terms of incentives, I would be hesitant to use that 3.8 towards incentives if there's another way to make it work. I mean, obviously the arguments that we've heard earlier tonight are I think are extremely valid in terms of you have to respect the knowledge and the years that we have on the police force, but at the same time, you have to realize that some of those people are nearing the time that they may choose to retire, and we do have to focus on the future. I mean, I think in general we're trying to figure out exactly what that looks like, but if there's a way that we can think outside of the box to get that done, not eat away at the only source of money that we even have any flexibility with, I think in terms of planning, we need to do that. But it brings me to my last point.
Before you go to your last point, I think that it's important for all of us to give direction to staff about how to do the incentives. And from what I'm hearing around the table is that they want you to come up with a way to do it that would not involve the 3.8 million, but that still would offer incentives, and if that's workable. Was that what I heard? Yes, Councilman Slater?
I'm not saying that. I don't know if that's realistic to give that direction to them. I think we have to rely on them a little bit to
I thought they were going to explore it, though. Didn't we ask them to explore it?
Well, I thought John made a point that he thinks that if you don't fill a position that it's a wash, but I think when you're talking about the police department, you know, if you want to keep the young officer, you might have to do something on the other end with some of the money to save. Trying to save jobs, I think, is our ultimate goal. Use the $3.8 million to save as many jobs as you possibly can, no matter how we, you know, the end should be to save the jobs. That's right. When we don't tie their hands, you know, so much.
Right.
And
Okay. Councilman Kerwin?
Flexibility is key.
Right.
Flexibility. It's not necessarily, I think, one of the things when the chief stood up and talked about the clerk position, I don't know if this is called clerk, the desk position. The desk position now filled by
Part-time.
retiree, a part-time, great knowledge, understands the system, professionalism, key professionalism, more opportunities like that, where you're seeing something like that. You have the best of both. But I'm looking more for a flexible approach in the way of doing this, rather than being locked into anything. That's the best I can offer. I don't know. That would be my recommendation and focus. Would be on flexibility at all levels, on how people can fit a new puzzle. Take a look at this from above, and look at a new puzzle on how these different pieces can work together.
Well, in setting the policy, and then it's up to the management to come up with, you know, how they're going to do it. We've talked about that I don't know how many times. But they always appreciate direction from the council, so then when they have their meeting, you know, rather than saying, well, we don't know yet. I think we're at a point where we've got to say tonight where we want to go. And I agree that the flexibility is important for them to be able to work out what they're going to do, but I think it's important to show the fact that we want to keep our public safety as strong as possible for as long as possible.
I agree with that.
Yeah. You had another point, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Gibbons?
Just really, it ties into the whole flexibility comment, I think, but mine was in terms of just this whole process in general. I mean, I think that twofold, we're dealing with a brand new process for everyone and staff to navigate, but also we're trying to put it into effect during the worst possible time. So I think that, you know, we're getting a lot of people that are very passionate about things within the city, and we have to look at it as a broad base, that we're not specifically trying to target one thing over another. I think getting the budget document really puts it into perspective, and when you add that to the discussions that we've had tonight about future restructuring in some of the areas that we may not have seen all of the layoffs happen in the next 12 months, but I think you see all the red, and you see that every single department is going to be targeted. Every single department is going to have to figure out a new way to deliver the services. But we do have to keep in mind that this is a brand new process. And I was just going through, while I was preparing, all of the what ifs. And there are a lot of what ifs. I mean, I think I could list them all, but I don't want to confuse the conversations more than they already get confused. But I think that, you know, the thing that you have to keep in mind is what Mr. Zerleg has reminded us time after time, that you can't produce this document and put in all of the what ifs. We have to look at it for what it is, and then we have to realize that we're going to be reevaluating it over and over and over and over again over the next couple of years. And I think everyone at the table wants to do what's best for the city as a whole. I think we're all going to be moving forward in that direction and kind of going through the process together. So,
yeah, I think that the big step of doing a 3-year budget and supporting that as looking toward the future is very important here. And when people in the community look at the total picture and not just a separate piece, then it becomes more understandable about why certain decisions would be made. And so I think that's look how much we've gained in these 3 meetings that we've had through our discussion and presentation and all. And so I think it's been very beneficial. Mr. Zernig?
Thank you. One thing we can do, we always have a labor contract that we're negotiating, and we can take a look at a strategy, if you will, in closed session for labor negotiations. That'll include buyouts and so forth, incentives, and have a conversation, so we're not putting our cards face up on the table for everyone to see at this time, and do it in that format.
Okay. We could do that. Okay, any other comments or questions, Council? Because I know we do need to do public comment, but I don't want to go to that till we've got everything worked on here, because that's what we're supposed to do, and then go to public comment once to study it. Councilman Beltrame?
I've sat here for 3 of these sessions now. And I know that when the grim picture was painted last September, and John said you can have option 1 or you can have option 2 that takes longer, but is in essence the same thing. We said, well, we probably need more information, but it looks like we don't really have a choice. And then when the voters voted no, and you all know I made no secret, I supported the millage increase. On the 25th of February, I was like, by goodness, we need to close the library, close the community center. If we could do it tomorrow, it would be great, because we said we'd do it. Upon reflection, I believe that we each were elected to do what is in the best long-term interest of the city. And Mr. Zerlag mentioned Bob Datto and his panel. The county with its AAA bond rating is not gutting their signature services. They've put every department on a diet. And so the question, the discussion I want to at least engage in is downsizing by amputation, and that is what we're doing. First you amputate the library and the museum and the nature center and then the community center. After you've done the building department, community affairs, so your relationships with the media and your citizens are down. You will look, the administration items, which include us, stay fairly constant through this 3-year budget. John absorbed people and functions. Others have as well. But remember on the 20th when John held up that graph that said, and there are going to be 63 people lost from the police department if we don't put this 3.8 in there. That's because in 3 years there's nobody else to cut, because you've cut everybody else through amputation first. Well, if I cut off my right arm and then my left arm and then my left leg, it's very difficult for me to stand, let alone to present myself well. And that's what we're doing with the city with this option 1 budget. So my question for you is this better than putting everyone on a diet? And your answer may be yes. But I believe that we owe it to the citizens of Troy to at least have that discussion, because we said we would have it, and we haven't.
Now you're talking about putting them on a diet. Are you talking about wage concessions?
Taking shared cuts from everybody. Now that you've downsized building, planning, engineering, those departments that deal with development, of which there's very little, now that you've downsized those to a right size, so to speak, you can't take cuts based on last year's budget, because last year's budget had those departments in full-blown form, and we know that they were overstaffed. So now that you've downsized them, is it better to eliminate whole segments of the brand, 1 at a time or 4 at a time over the next 3 years, so that you have nothing left but police officers to cut? Or do you put everybody on a diet over the next years for as long as you can?
Part of the problem with that comes to contract negotiations. Some of the contracts which are not able to be opened unless they decide they're going to. And the other thing is that when you're in a situation where you only have so much money and you have to make a choice, I'm trying to think of some analogies where we could talk about it here. About
Well, I'll give you
choices
one.
there. Okay.
Lots of families, when they have a budget crunch, no longer go on vacation or go out to dinner. Other families say, we used to go to Morton's, we're going to go to Big Boy. But they still go out because it's still something the family values. Or they take a staycation at home, but do all of their day stuff out so that they don't have that $100 hotel bill. Families make different choices. Some cut all of that out altogether, others don't. And as to the contracts, virtually everyone's up except TPOA that has no increase over the first, and then they have another one. So contracts have to be dealt with. Don't use that as an excuse to not have the philosophical discussion, please.
Well, no, I was mentioning it as one option there. I think we're still having the discussion. I just want it to be part of the picture here. Councilman Slater?
I think what you're talking about is maybe option 2, basically. But I've heard that analogy before about going out to dinner, and for me it doesn't wash, because we're talking about apples and oranges here. We're not talking about a family that has to cut. Would you take the locks off your doors? Would you take your doors down? Would you give up your security at your house? Not going out to dinner, not should I cut the lawn once a week or twice a week. Are you going to tear down the security of your house?
A lot of alarm systems haven't been renewed.
Understood, but I don't
I
think it's fair.
understand what you're saying.
I don't think it's fair to compare a family budget to this city's budget. I also supported the millage. I thought it was the right thing to do, to cut and still maintain some money to operate. But we never got the chance to do that. So here we are. And in my opinion, the only other option here than what we're talking about is we have to cut police officers now, if you want to do what you want to do. I thought as a council we made a decision not to do that we thought it was important to maintain public safety. That's the direction we gave to John, and John did what we asked him to do. I thought we had discussed that a little bit and decided to go with option 1. So I don't think, in my opinion, we should sacrifice public safety. We made a decision, I thought, to not do that. We can't cut wages, we can't cut benefits enough to stop this bleeding. It's impossible to stop the bleeding without getting rid of people. I've really come to that conclusion, and I came to that conclusion when I supported the millage. I did all my homework. I said that I did my homework, and I believe what I saw. I believe today what I saw back then. So I'm willing to look at every possible way to save the library. I think it's an important function to this city, but maybe we can do that in a different way. I think we all got little ideas that maybe we want to try and use. You have ideas. I think we all do. I think that's the way to go, not sacrifice public safety. So, you proposed an idea that I support. There are other ideas out there. Let's not sacrifice public safety, I don't think, at this point, to change the whole ballgame. So that's my thoughts.
Councilman McGinnis?
I agree with what Councilperson Slater's saying, and I think that I understand where you're coming from. I mean, in terms of what it sometimes feels like when we're talking about the decisions that have to be made in light of the budget and amputating important qualities of life in the city that, at least for myself, I've had my whole life. So I think it does, it's the 5 stages of grief, I think, and sometimes you think you've made it to one and then you go back to another. It happens to me kind of on a weekly basis. But I think that when you make that kind of analogy, it defeats the purpose of the 3-year outlook, I think, to some extent, because there are going to be what ifs, and we did talk about with setting aside the money to get together. We're focusing so much on getting through the budget and trying to make some of these hard decisions up front. But we are going to be continuing to look at this, and there are going to be what ifs. I mean, we're talking about some of the departments that have gone through the process in terms of reorganization, but there are some of them that have not, and there are a lot of different things that are going to come up in the next 3 years. And I think that you can be confident that the group of people that you're working with are going to do everything that they can to make the decisions to keep some semblance of the city intact. But I think we have to deal with what we have here. The numbers are the numbers, and so we've got to give some direction, and then we have to be able to work from there. So I think that's why I would continue to support option 1. I think it's the basic premise of what we thought when we were looking at the numbers back in September. It's still there for me anyway, so I would have to continue at least to go down that direction when you're looking at the numbers that we know now, and knowing that everyone is going to be working really hard for the rest of the time that they're here to make those decisions as they're coming at us.
Anybody else? Councilwoman Kerwin?
I'm not with the analogy either. I mean, I don't, what we're really facing is cuts because we don't have additional revenue. We don't have additional revenue from the county picking up their piece. We don't have additional revenue from the state, which is supporting us, and we don't have additional revenue from our community. So what we are left with, when you're talking about the fingers and the arms and the other arm, is the result of cuts, and that's what cuts do. That's the reality. That's no bargaining. That's bare bones, and that's where we are. I think the people in general always believe there's more fat. You just keep cutting that. I agree. So when you talk about the diet, that was the diet. For years and years there has been a diet. We just haven't been quite as open about that diet. But this is where we are. So as much as I love our quality of life services, as much as I spend time there, I just don't see the revenue. And that becomes more and more apparent when you're talking about, even when you said the part-timers and said, now how much is that worth? The $4 million, the $5 million for the services we love in this community have just gone dry. We don't have it. We have tough choices to make. None of them is desirable. None is popular. I understand that. But we have to, as the manager said at the conclusion of absolutely everything that we've had, is that depend on a professional and dedicated workforce, budget realism, and the political will to do what is right. And that's what we're grappling with. That's why we have these conversations. What to do with the limited resources that we have. I wish things were different. I am glad that we are as candid and as transparent as we are. And I think for people who say, well, no other community, and we do get those emails or those phone calls, simply haven't seen it yet. And I think that we will get through this. This will not be easy. We will be transformed, and there is a future. It just seems to be 2028, which is a long time. In the meantime, we have to do what we can.
But as far as other cities, every single day there's another article about drastic things that other communities are doing, and at least it's getting out there now if people are reading the newspapers, to see that that's happening in all the communities. So, yes, Councilman Fleming?
As we roll this budget.
Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
Thank you. As we roll this budget forward, we know there are going to be other opportunities. We don't know. You can only take a snapshot right now. But we all know there are things as you negotiate that are going to come forward. As you negotiate with other cities, there are things that are going to come forward to save money. There may be other revenue generation opportunities. I had a brief conversation with Mr. Zerlag last week about how do we generate more revenue. I mean, we had, what, 37% of the people vote for a millage increase. Is there a mechanism for those people that want to pay additional taxes, pay additional revenues? Is there a way you put that on the water bill that is legal? I don't know. I can't be the architect of that. I'm just throwing it on the table. Is there a mechanism for that, for those that are wanting to pay more taxes to salvage service or something? Is that a way? I don't know. But I throw that on the table. See everybody shaking their heads no, but I'm putting it out there, you know. Because I have been told by people, I will pay more, or give them the opportunity to pay more. You know, if there's a legal way to do that and a way to account for those funds, I'd say let them pay. You know, but I believe there are going to be other opportunities as we move forward. I'm not for closing the library either, and I'm not saying today we're making that decision. I think as we roll forward with this. The community center, I think, is going to be able to stay open. That's going to salvage jobs. It's close enough to being balanced. We can do that. And that will salvage job. But let's just continue as a council to have study sessions, to continue to work, to look for opportunities. And as our management team works with the different departments, see what they can accomplish as well. But right now, we're doing the best we can. But I think there's other opportunities. Even on the capital, I still think there's things that we could be taking out. I know you don't agree with me, but 2 years down the road we're taking them out, but today we can't. But 2 years down the road we can cut $500,000 here, $500,000 there. But today we can't. Well, I think today we can take more out of capital and should.
The whole thing with the money to save certain things, it has to be sustained revenue of a sizable amount. The only way to get a sustained revenue of a sizable amount is from everybody, not from just a few that want to pay it. Can't set up your tax system that way. It's probably not even legal to set it up that way. But it has to be, and that's where our problem is. That's why we're up against that hard wall. We really are. We are. Councilwoman Beltramini?
I appreciate everybody weighing in because, quite honestly, we did not have this interchange before. And I think waiting until right before the last slide of the budget session probably wasn't the appropriate thing to do, but that's when there was time. And you're right, Mary, there's no fat. I mean, our police department is 30% below the national average and 16% below the state average on what we do in officers per population. And you saw the statistics. If you take out the portion of our personnel that are police officers and police personnel and everybody else that waits on the citizens of the city, we're down to like 2 people. 2 people per 1,000 that wait on our citizens and keep the city running. So for those people who think that Troy ought to be run by 2 guys in a phone booth, it pretty much is. You know, we are lean already. But I do think that we all owed it to our citizens to have the discussion because this budget could have been balanced a number of ways. And we chose amputation. So that's...
and I think, speaking about employees, that when we looked at page 43 in the document, that we had full-time employees per 1,000, it's 5.7 nationwide. But by 2013, we'll be down to 3.9.
And that includes public safety?
That includes everything. Correct. Yeah. Okay, anything else more from council? Okay, we'll open it for public comment, and remember that this is...
I have one more thing.
Oh, okay. Councilwoman Kerr, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We were looking at privatization of all departments, and I just wanted to ask, have you turned in your privatization stuff from the legal department?
I'm going out for bids this month. We'll have that, we're starting the process.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were looking at all departments, and all of a sudden it dawned on me that we hadn't said anything about.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Remember that on public comment, 5 minutes per person. You don't have to talk the whole 5 minutes if you don't want to. And we're going to ask you to come to the mic and give us your name. Is there anyone who wants to make a public comment at this point? Mr. Savage. Did a lot of people come to the dance?
Oh, it was great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was a great time. Thank you.
Last time we saw you, that was your parting comment, so I thought I'd make it your start
That's
comment.
right. Yes, it did go very well.
Okay.
I may be a little wrong, but when I listened to Councilwoman Beltramini's comments about everybody going on a diet, I think my understanding was, and if you recall in the comments that I sent to the council, I'm going back to when I was working in the tool and die industry, and the contract time came up. The company, which was a long-established company, a really good company, they said if we have to pay health insurance for our retirees, we will go out of business. It's going to put us out of business. So they asked the union to cut out the health insurance. The union refused. And within a year, they went out of business. So nobody got health insurance, nobody got pension, and nobody had a job. If I recall recently, in the last year, I think it was, and I might have the details wrong, but the state police offered or asked the union to open negotiations so they could cut everybody's wages a little, and if that were the case, they would not have to lay off any troopers. And the union refused, and they laid off troopers. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Tom Crenn?
First, I just want to thank city management for the fabulous job of looking long range. I think it's so critical, and I'm really impressed that they have looked long range on our financial situation. I especially want to thank John Lamorato for his providing award-winning guidance in our budget process. I've been a resident for 31 years here, and I've noticed that over all these years, the city has been very fiscally responsible. They've always planned for rainy days. They've always set aside savings. It's just been run, I thought, and I still think, incredibly well. Except for one year in 2007, during the April and May budget talks, a group of 4 people, council people, I can recall their names here. Yeah, Martin Howrlack, Dave Lambert, Wade Fleming, and Christina Broomfield pushed real hard to reduce the refuse and recycling fund from 0.83 mils to 0.68. That was a 0.15 reduction. I know John, at the time, John Lamorato basically warned the council, said, you know, fuel costs are going up. There is a possibility that the 0.68 will not cover the costs of refuse in subsequent years. And but the 4 council members basically won the day for themselves. Our rate was reduced to 0.68. Other council members at the time, Louis Schilling, Gene Stein, and Robin Beltramini, made other suggestions for the use of that money, mainly to put some in savings, and they even brought up putting some into the capital project fund for roads. But again, those suggestions failed, and of course, this council is really aware of what we are today on that fund, what happened. We had to put in another 0.07 mils in 2009 to bring it up to 0.75, and John, of course, showed you, what's going to happen in subsequent years has got to go up. What I see is that, to me, what it appears, at least to me, is that these 4 people, and they self-describe themselves as the tax fighters, they provided basically a shell game and not a long-range plan like the city has done for decades. And that bothers me. I've got just a couple questions. If council left the .83 mils in place back in 2007, would we have to raise it to .87 now? And what will the public have to vote for any tax increase for the refuse fund? Thanks.
No, the refuge doesn't have to be. As you were talking, I noticed that right behind the speaker were the Distinguished Budget Presentation Awards, and we have one more spot for this year's budget.
How nice.
And then room down below for more. Okay, anybody else that wants to speak? Yes.
David Ashland. Just a couple of quick comments. Whenever you make a little comparison with employees per 1,000 residents, and we say a national average, and what our number is going to be, national average is going to be like our number, I think. I mean, everybody's going to suffer. So it's like saying car sales in 2000 or 2008 were X, and in 2011 they're Y. You can't do that. The industry of cities is going down. The other thing I want to comment is what Robin said. I think we could have a blended solution. This budget we're talking about, as John pointed out, is going to be a rolling budget with iteration and iteration and iteration. I think what Robin was saying is a blended solution. Maybe, I'm making up numbers, maybe a 20% across the board cut in salaries. Maybe then we can save more jobs. I don't think it has to be one or the other, but I've seen no analysis of any kind of a blended approach. I saw her make I heard her make this presentation, and 2 or 3 people just basically dissed it, if I may say. We can't do that. We can't do that. I think her suggestion was a great one, and I think it needs some attention. Now, when you talk about police officers and incentives to maybe get every department in the city, or maybe just police, whatever it is, to leave because of an incentive to preserve the young officers, what's the cost of this retraining of if we have to hire more new officers in 3, 4, 5, 6 years? What is the cost trade-off of doing this? Again, a blended solution. Maybe we can afford to lose, with no incentive, we lose young officers because what we will save in experience will get us through the near term. I don't know the answer to this, but I think all of these suggestions, these 2 or 3 things I brought up, I think they've been just discounted too quickly. And I think John's suggestion of making another roll of some of this is very important. And I think council has to look at this a little more strongly than you have. I think you're making the job far too easy for yourself. By throwing out good ideas, they won't work. You're making the council job easy. You're making the impact on the citizens very difficult. Thank you.
Anyone else that wants to make a public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Council. My name is Edna Abraham. Again, lifelong resident of Troy, 26-year card-carrying patron of the library, and self-admitted in stage 2 denial right now. I'm angry. And I'm angry for many reasons, but don't worry, I won't call anyone Shrek, okay? I'm angry that there was misinformation out there on the blogs that misconstrued the millage. I'm angry that the millage got voted down. And I'm angry that we're talking about the library as a quality of life service. I'm sorry, I just can't see it that way. For unemployed people using the library as a major resource for career development and to inquire after jobs, that's not quality of life. That's life for them, it's life for their family, it's life for their kids. I have a real problem calling that quality of life. For students, K through 12 especially, who don't have access during school hours necessarily to the libraries because their budgets are being cut. This is their education. It's not quality of life. It is their life. I know a lot about the 5 stages of denial. And I'll tell you why. I'm a General Motors employee. And let me tell you that last 18 months have been excruciating. Excruciating. You can ask my family. They've seen me deal with it for 18 months. When I hear about amputations, it really makes me shudder. It really makes me shudder, and I'll tell you why. Because at General Motors, every employee took a haircut. Everyone, from the executives to the board to the directors, managers, everyone, down to the line, even with the contracts, UAW. Myself, I had a 5% wage decrease. Okay, managers had 8%, directors 10%. Everyone took a haircut, and let me tell you, everyone was happy to do it because they knew it ended up saving jobs, and it protected other people. As you may all recall, because Jim's been in the news for the past 18 months, there was a lot of layoffs, white collar and blue collar. Some of it was taken care of through these incentive packages. Guess what? So many incentives went out, lost experience, we're hiring again, we're retraining. There's a cost to that. It affects every employee that's been around because we've got to train them and get them up to speed and still do the work that we were doing before, plus our neighbors' work. So let's be very careful when we say amputation is the only way to go, because it's not. It really is not. I know you have a hard decision in front of you. It's not easy. I've been part of discussions like this at work. There is no happy solution. But I think you're hearing from the citizens of Troy that you cannot compare the library to the nature center. You can't compare it to the aquatic center. You can't compare it to any of the other city quality of life services. If someone said you could only have the library out of the 5 things that are grouped in that category, they'd say, okay, just give us the library. Don't give me the community center, the aquatic center. I don't use those on a regular basis. I think people truly care, and you can tell by the passionate responses from the strident citizens of Troy that are in this room, and I think you've seen it by the thousands of people who have signed a petition. So again, I think you truly need to consider other options besides option 1 and option 2. And I think I heard last week, we need to consider all things. But I think you guys are just considering what's in option A and what's in option 2, or option A and B, and nothing else. I also heard last week, we don't want to, borrow from Peter to pay Paul. But we're doing that. We're doing that, and we're paying with Troy's reputation. Because right now, Troy's kind of the laughing stock. You guys are closing the library, and I know other cities may not be looking at a 3-year budget. They may come to this situation too. But have you ever considered, combining the Troy Library with another city's library? Share the services, share the costs? I haven't heard anyone suggest that. I haven't heard it today. I haven't heard it last week. It's something that we can't keep off the table. I think the citizens are riled, and I think a lot of them are still in denial, and I know this by talking with coworkers who live in Troy who still don't believe the library is going to be closed, despite what the eccentric says.
Thank you, ma'am. Did you want to speak, ma'am?
I would.
Yes. Come forward. Give us your name.
My name is Jill McClure, and I am very blessed and grateful that she preempted my discussion right now. Of all the community services, second to public safety, I am most concerned over the library's future, which is much more than just a quality of life bonus in this community. I was employed in the city of Troy for over 10 years, during which time I moved here for easier commuting, lower crime rates, and the wide array of community services offered. The primary attraction for me was then and still is the Troy Public Library. Due to company downsizing and a poor economic climate, I was laid off in 2008 and was forced to make dramatic changes. I relinquished my home internet access, limited my leisure travel, and constructed a different work and life routine that brought me to the library 5, sometimes 6 days a week, and often twice in any given day. The library has become my second home, where I've honed my computer skills in Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, where staff has pointed me to valuable resources in the form of books, research websites, and have offered tremendous workshops. I have found out of necessity just how valuable this library really is. Last week I approached several patrons in the Technology Center, those individuals in particular who have become familiar faces to me, some of them friends, over the past year and a half, and I asked them for their testimonies. Over 2/3 indicated that the library's computer and internet is the only source available to them. Half of them are unemployed. 1/3 of them are there 3 times a week, and nearly 1/4 of them come there more than once a day. In response to computer use, 20% use the Tech Center for online classes and education, 42% for job search, 50% for specific internet search, and 57% for research. Let me also read a few of their remarks. One gentleman said, "My wife and I really depend on the Troy Library's resources, books, internet, and community meetings for our employment search. Also, my kids are homeschooled, and the library is what makes this possible." Other responses: "I've taken a few classes here, and they helped a lot. If the library closes, it would hurt my business. I use the internet to work online, and right now, this is how I make a living. If they close, it would hurt me badly." And a third: "I can't afford a PC at home, and yet if the library closes or severely curtails hours, it will make it difficult for me to stay in touch. I also volunteer for Leader Dogs for the Blind, and I receive a lot of necessary information via computer." Other comments elaborate on crucial unemployed worker internet communication for benefits, internet accessibility for online education, and reference the family and the library that keeps the family intact. Back in mid-October of 2009, during early stages of the TDS system transition, library staff worked tirelessly. Polaris's implementation was a diligent and successful effort by a team that was determined to make money savings happen. My first comment this evening brings to mind a discussion on the library's website on October 12, 2009. One particular person summarized my recent statistics even back then. "The library," he said, "is a cornerstone of a community in the best of times and a lifeline for many in the worst. The Troy Library is packed every day of the week with people who are, among other things, desperately searching for jobs, using the internet because they can no longer afford it at home, bringing their children or themselves for a wonderful free entertainment, studying because there's no quiet place to do it at home, researching their investments, and yes, checking out the latest bestsellers excuse me, and blockbuster movies for free or for a fraction of the cost of buying a book or renting a DVD at the video store." He ended his statement by saying, "This is our beloved Troy Library, which exists simply to make your life easier and more fun. God help us all if it goes away." My comment followed his. I relate to your comments because they relate to real issues and real crises. And I closed my internet comment with, "It's unfortunate in the midst of hasty conclusions that they don't recognize the real issues and real crises of the day and the real significance this library has in our community." I must add before I wrap up this evening that this person's initial website comments were directed to an apparently panicked, hasty citizen who seemed stuck on crisis and closed to options. Therefore, City Council members, you are in a position where complex budget options lie before you, and decisions made in the next week will have lasting consequence on this city. Let the exemplary staff of Troy Public Library serve as a model of ethical competence, for it is with similar conscientious effort, thorough investigation, and untiring diligence that we depend on you also to remain open, revisit the facts, and exhaust all options. Please allow no haste, misguidance, or weariness to close Troy Public Library and impair this community. For these are times we must dig deep to find solutions to our challenges. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak? I'm seeing none. Then we're in adjournment.